Hereby open Board of Selectmen meeting July 30th, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the Rutland Public Library. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to sign Treasury warrants number 3 and 29 and payroll?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Acceptance of meeting minutes from Monday, July 2nd.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Comments? All in favor as presented?
Aye.
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 Unanimous? Motion to accept.
Motion to accept July 9th.
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
4 ayes, 1 abstention. Great. I stayed standing because I want to meet the dog. At 6 o'clock, we have Chief Monaco. Should I sit?
Just sit for a moment.
Relax.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening, Chief.
So the first thing I'd like to talk about, happily, I can introduce our new K-9 unit, K-9 Cooney and Officer Matt Finuccio. Come on in.
I think I knew I should have stayed standing.
Very excited to be here.
Hello, K-9 Cooney.
So Matt and Cooney just completed about 14 weeks of intensive patrol training at the Boston Police Academy. Matt's going to get into more detail about what kind of stuff they learned there, and he's going to do a little demonstration for you. This has been very successful so far, and I want to thank the board and thank Margaret for your support in this, and thank the town. We've got a lot of donations already to help support this program. Matt, you want to talk a little bit about what you did at training?
Sure. So, patrol training is the basic function for mainly all K-9 units. From after certification patrol, they usually get certified in specialized fields like EOD, which is bomb detection, and narcotics, which is what Cooney's plan is down the road. Patrol certification, it was very intensive. That's something that that not all officers are built for, and with him, and he's definitely somebody that assisted me in getting through it as well. It's definitely a team sport, and what they teach us is detection of human odor, which will translate into tracking. So you track somebody through a wooded area, fields, a lot of the terrain like we have in town, and he actually can detect hard surface tracking, which means you walk across a asphalt parking lot, he can follow that scent path. That takes a little bit more skill. Obviously, obedience is very big because it translates to everything else that you deal with when you're on a serious situation call. If I need him to go into a down while I'm doing something, he will. And if I need to frisk a suspect, he'll stay in this position. And keep in mind, he's pretty rambunctious today because there's a lot of people, and we haven't done a lot of the normal exercises like we normally would. So he's got a lot of energy tonight. And he's also trained in evidence recovery. So I hide a few things, which I've done tonight. He'll search a room and he's looking for those evidence articles that have human odor on them. So that's what he's trained to do. And obviously, apprehension of a suspect. It's a minor piece of what canines are capable of, but it is still reality that people need to keep in mind. You can apprehend suspects through bite work. So that's definitely something that I would say is going to be on the low spectrum, but it's something to keep in mind. Anybody have any questions about the certification process or anything else related? That's it.
So you said search and rescue is sort of on the horizon for him. It wasn't necessarily part of that first 14 weeks?
Not search and rescue unless
Or
there's
search.
narcotic search is what he's going to go down the road. Search and rescue is kind of a different animal.
Okay.
That's something that a dog is trained kind of differently in. He, with patrol course, everything that kind of corresponds as far as his scent recognition is just through human odor. So, and he's really good at it. He really can track very well. I would say probably one of the better ones in the class.
So it's tracking.
Yeah, that's tracking. We tracked somebody for just under a mile through dense woods in the middle of Hyde Park in Boston, over streams, well, through streams, trees, all types of debris that these lines are very easy to get caught on, but he stays on the track. You can tell definitely when he's on a scent because you don't even see his head. All you see is his shoulder blades because his nose is buried in the ground. And when he gets close to a target, you'll see usually his head elevated because he's so close that it's called air scenting, and that means that he's getting close.
What will you be able to do with him in terms of public interaction? Is he going to be limited?
No, he will not be limited. He's actually, this town is very fortunate to have him because there's a lot of other dogs that I went to the certification program with, and excellent dogs, but their demeanor is not the same. He has an ability to socialize to a degree. You don't want to over-socialize them, but he definitely has a smell there. He's able to get close to people, whereas the other dogs, if you even go near the car, they're going to start rocking the car, barking, clawing at the cage. So he has the great ability of having that switch that can be flicked.
Is that something that he'll probably maintain, or will you have to watch as he is?
I think it's something that he'll definitely maintain, but it's something that we'll have to monitor just strictly on the maturing aspect. Right now he's like an adolescent. So when he gets to be a full mature male dog, his behavior might change a little bit. So we're just gonna have to keep watch, that's all.
It's going to be protective of you,
Yes.
especially as time goes on, right? You know, so-
Yeah, as time goes on, the bond continues to grow. I'm the one that feeds him every day. All right.
We're gonna have you check that room after the
Yeah.
meeting.
I went in there and I was gonna put, for the demonstration, I was going to put a few things in there, but, so he might be smelling that. But no, he actually is very good with handle protection. Like I was demonstrating when I put him in the down and I frisked the suspect. Obviously there's no suspect here, but I'll be able to walk in front of him. He'll remain in that down position, which all goes back to the obedience factor. And if that suspect moves or flinches or pushes me out of the way or attacks me, he's gonna go in for the apprehension his way.
Did he come from a line of police dogs, or?
That I'm not sure of. All I can tell you as far as his lineage is he is straight from Germany. I have his passport to prove it. He actually has a dog passport. And from what the breeder says is that his family that is just an excellent breed of dog, excellent family of dogs, but I don't know if they're all police dogs.
How old is he now?
He is, I think, 17 or 18 months. I have to double check his date of birth. And right now, that may be something I can demonstrate after the fact, but I have in my pocket a ball, and it's a ball on a string. So not a tennis ball, but what that string is doing is when it's swinging around, it's kind of driving his prey drive, and he can smell it and he really wants to play. Play is a huge part of what these animals are capable of doing, and it all correlates back to doing the job.
It's a reward type thing?
Major reward, huge, yeah. And he would play until he drops. So you gotta be careful, especially in the hot weeks of the hot months of the summer. But yeah, he'll play until he can't play anymore, or work until he can't work anymore.
What is the best way for people to support the program if they want to make donations? Do you want, obviously I know straight cash is always welcome. I know he has his own gift account.
He does.
Is there anything else that people can do?
Like an account at Ellie's or anything that
We
people-
do, and Ellie's has been excellent. They've been able to provide us with whatever we needed and very accommodating, excuse me. But other than what we have set up, I don't know, I think that might be more of a chief question.
So we do have the gift account set up with the town, and there also is a private foundation, it's the Rutland Police Canine Foundation, that has been raising funds online for Cooney, and we're planning on using that to do some fundraising events in the very near future. So keep an ear open, and we'll have some fun stuff that people can come to and participate in. It's important to note that this program so far has not cost the town a dollar. Everything's been fully funded by the grant, and I think we've only expended a little bit over half of the grant money. So there's still quite a bit left and quite a bit of donation money left to keep this going for a few more years before we have to work it into our own budget.
And he's covered with health insurance, yes?
Matt, does he have insurance?
Well, health insurance, he's covered through the vet for any type of medical procedures he needs, as far as like his routine work, lab work, etc. As far as emergency care, if something were to happen to him, I have to look into that.
The Hubbardston Veterinary Clinic was very generous with coverage for him.
Yeah,
All
including medications.
procedures are free. Medication we get at cost. All his
Checkups, yeah.
checkups are free. So, and there's a whole list of other entities and people that have helped us. And eventually, we're going to put something out and recognize all those people.
And it's also important to recognize there's a lot of organizations, even just in the Commonwealth alone, that generate money strictly for police dogs. Like Best the Dog, it's a good program, but there's many more than just that.
So we've saved money on the, like I said, we've only expended half the grant. We've saved money because the vest is being donated. He has a door popper that's being donated. We put the cage in the cruiser ourselves instead of paying somebody to do it. So we've taken a lot of measures to try and save money.
Yeah.
Matt, before do you want to do your demonstration now?
It might be a little tricky because we got a lot of people in that area, so.
Okay.
But I can at least give you the idea as to how much he gets fixated on this.
Big one.
It's a hybrid dog.
Takes you out.
He has an exceptional drive. He really does.
Yeah, if you want to just explain what you
Okay,
did.
yeah, that's a good idea. So on the other side of that door, it's called article searches, and articles are evidence, guns, knives, even just like instrumentalities of a crime, like a screwdriver or a pry bar to get into somebody's house. So I see how there's nothing else that he's looking at right now. But anyway, that is what he would be looking for. So I give him a certain command, and a lot of his commands are in German. And that command would tell him, okay, now I need to look for something. So he uses his nose and he goes all throughout anywhere until he locates it. And once he locates it, he lays down, he bops his nose where he believes the item to be. And if he can't get to it, he'll start getting a little bit more aggressive by clawing. And that's a huge part of what he can do. And it's a very important part too. Evidence recovery is pretty important. So I put a flashlight and a knife behind the door, and he would be able to find that through human odor. And that's why it's important never to discourage them when they're jumping on top of things. Quite opposite of a pet. You want to encourage them and give them recognition for when they're jumping on places, because it's giving them that reward for exploration. So when I first took control of him as a handler, or a handler in training, I should say, if I took this out, I would have to use all my power to hold him down and do what I had to with this. So the fact that I can let the leash go is extraordinary. It was just 14 weeks ago. There's a lot of things that may seem kind of mundane, but they're really not. So, but with this, it's a huge drive factor. And as you can see, he's not going to go for it unless I give him the command of okay. That's how else to say it.
Oh, my.
All right. So, and now he'll have that until they can look at it. So, it was a pleasure to introduce him to the town. If you guys have any other questions, I can answer them for you if you have them. Otherwise, I thank you for inviting me to this meeting.
Thanks for taking it on.
Thank you. Nice job.
Stay there 1 minute. In your packet that I just left with you, there is a letter of commendation to Officer Finuccio. You may recall that when we first started this program, there was another officer that was going to do it, and circumstances changed and Matt took over. So I have a letter from Matt right here. On April 30th, I'm just going to read it. On April 30th of this year, due to unforeseen circumstances, I approached you and asked you if you would be willing to take on the department's canine handler assignment starting the next day. As any police officer knows, and as you're well aware, being a canine handler takes an extraordinary level of dedication and commitment. Knowing this, you took the assignment without hesitation. The very next day, you reported for canine training with a class that was already 2 weeks underway, a dog that you were not familiar with, and working for a police department that has never run a canine unit. Despite the obstacles listed above, you took this challenge and met it full force without any prior preparation. You and K-9 Cooney successfully completed the difficult and demanding police K-9 handlers course with the Boston Police Department. From everything that I've heard and seen so far, you and Cooney make an excellent team and are going to do very well together. I want to thank you for volunteering for this assignment, and I commend you for the strong work you've done with it so far. Furthermore, please extend my gratitude to your family, as I know they too were affected by the sudden appearance of a police dog in a kennel at your home. Again, thank you for your dedication to this program. I speak for the entire department and the town when I say we look forward to working alongside you and Cooney. So that's for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
You too, thank you.
Bye, Cooney. Gotta meet the dog another time.
I know.
So I'll keep it on a roll with the good news. In the packet's also 2 more letters of commendation. First one is for Detective John Sanji. I'll just summarize these ones. In September of 2017, Detective Sanji took a report of an internet fraud case. A lot of times we don't have the resources to investigate these, and we don't have the facilities to do it. A Rutland family was scammed out of about $9,000 cash when they thought they were purchasing a tractor. In fact, there was no tractor. Detective Sanji was successfully able to track down the suspect in this case, who lived in New York City. He was able to coordinate with several other law enforcement agencies, federal agencies, the NYPD, the district attorney's office, the Fusion Center, and facial recognition and everything. And he was able to get this suspect arrested in New York, extradited to Massachusetts, and convicted of the crime. And the family was able to get the full restitution, full $9,000 back for that they lost.
Excellent.
Furthermore, this case opened up something with the feds, and they're looking at this guy for a bigger string of online fraud activities. So I'd like to applaud John Sanji for a job well done. And next in there is a letter of commendation to Officer Mai Grover. At the beginning of this year, when I became chief, I approached Mai and I said, "Do you want to be school resource officer?" And she kind of wishy-washy said, I don't know. And then she volunteered to do it. And from that point on, she's just ran full steam ahead with it. She has created nothing but compliments and praise from the school administration, the kids, the parents, and other people in town that have been seeing what she's doing. She's coordinated with other school resource officers, and she's done a lot of work to bring in programs to the Rutland schools that we've never had before. And actually, at the end of the summer, we're going to be sending her to a school resource officer school, so she'll have more tools to better do this job in the fall. And she's done a great job with it, and I hope she keeps up with it. All right, as far as the rest of the department updates, we finished out FY18 under budget slightly. Our expenses we expended to the penny, and that wasn't because we were trying to spend money at the end of the year. That's just what it came to. And as far as wages are concerned, we stayed under budget, but we're very, very close to what we had allocated. 4th of July festivities went very well. There were no major incidents, no concerns that were brought to my attention during the events. On the 3rd, the night of the fireworks, we implemented a different traffic pattern at the end of the show, and I think it worked out very well. We're going to tweak it a little bit and try it again next year. The only bad news I got is that staffing's a little tough right now because I have 4 officers out injured and 1 at the academy, so we're down. But we're going to be okay. I got a new part-time officer that's going to be starting soon, and try to fill in some of those gaps. Also in your packet, you will see a gift from the Police Association. The Police Association has recently purchased rubber flooring for installation in the department's basement, and they're going to be working on creating a gymnasium down there. So I think that's all I got. Anybody got any questions?
Please thank the association. Is there anything that they would like support on in terms of getting more equipment in, or something they're working on?
I believe they're working with a vendor who specializes in equipment for public safety.
Okay.
But I will pass that along to the president.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chief.
Oh, and on behalf of the whole department, thank you, Margaret, for everything you've done for us.
Thank you. You've done a great job,
Thank
and your
you.
department is going places.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. So Carrie Ann, you got made late by a dog. Come on up.
I'm not going to outdo the dog. There's no way. but-
No, it's not true.
So-
Not true. Please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Carrie Ann Goldsmith, the Executive Director for Devereux. And every year, Devereux likes to take the opportunity to appreciate and acknowledge the incredible community that we have here in Rutland. Devereux has been providing both special education services and services for individuals with emotional, behavioral, and cognitive differences for over 50 years in Rutland. And we have developed a great relationship with the town. We continue to focus on positive environment for our students that we serve, and through community policing have seen the increase in opportunities for fun and engaging activities for our students. Our students have had the opportunity to play basketball and softball games with the officers. They also had the opportunity to tour both the firehouse and the police station. And some of our students, although they may seem like a small thing, some of our students still on their bureau have a picture of them in the fire truck in the seat. Because most of our kids don't have normative experiences. When they get to us, the thought of developing a relationship with the town or police officers is not something they think about. So these kind of little moments really make a big difference. I think part of the success of our relationship has really been our open communication and the support that we have collectively with the town. I meet regularly with Margaret and both chiefs to talk about ways that Devereux can continue to be an active member of the community and to address any issues or concerns that may arise. This year, we actually opened our staff training to town employees, including first aid, CPR, and our behavior management training. So we were creating another opportunity for support and learning. And we also have been working closely with both chiefs on reviewing and enhancing Devereux's emergency preparedness plan. And their level of expertise has been invaluable to us. Our students and staff actually recently just held a small fundraiser event to raise dollars for Cooney. And they are still patiently waiting to meet him, so they're excited to pass along those dollars. I think they raised about $500, which was just great. Devereux continues its volunteer tradition in the community, such as the crop walk, food drives, clearing the rail trails. We place great emphasis on encouraging good citizenship for our students, and we will continue to seek opportunities to demonstrate this. I think another small but important community contribution from Devereux is our support of local businesses. We have a total of over 450 employees, not all in the town of Rutland, but from gas, vehicle maintenance, sandwiches, pizza, coffee, and snacks, our staff are daily customers locally, and I think that's really helpful to the local businesses. For many years, Devereux has presented a monetary gift to the town of Rutland. While we definitely must maintain close watch over our budget, we are a nonprofit, we do believe it's important to set aside funds when we can to give the town and bring relief in vital areas. So I'm happy to highlight that once again this year we're going to make a significant gift to the town of $42,000. Devereux serves some of the state's most vulnerable children and families. Many of the youth who come to Devereux have actually been permanently removed from their families at no fault of their own. Devereux and the surrounding community is their home, and this is where memories will be made in this town. As we help these students heal, develop skills, and gain hope, we appreciate you partnering with Devereux in this incredibly important endeavor. We build hope, and hope can change everything for kids. I would like to very much look forward to Devereux's continued partnership with the Rutland community. Margaret, I wish you nothing but the best. You've been wonderful to work with, and I definitely look forward to working with the two new selectmen that I haven't really had the opportunity to spend time with. So thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carrie, thank you. All right, moving on, we have the board and committee member reappointments that were held over for further conversation on the 30th. Do any board members have any comments? Or changes, I suppose?
We did. There was a couple individuals that we had asked to come back to this meeting just before we made a motion on their reappointment. And are they here today?
I believe all three are here. I saw
Mr. Coppola?
Mr. Koppel is here. Mr. Sunical just arrived. And Mr. Delaquila is right there.
Okay. Do we have an opportunity maybe just engage in some questions, a little Q&A here before we?
Okay, so why don't we go in, I have no idea which order. Was it Mr. Sunical? Are you still here in the room, right in front of me? Can you go up to the mic?
Thank you for coming.
Name and address.
Christopher Senecal, 64 Glenwood Road.
Can you tell us about your time on the board you've been serving on?
I serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I've been there for, I believe, 13 years.
Could you tell us about the Zoning Board of Appeals? Now, I want to preface, part of the reason why we had asked to step this back is because 40% of the select board are brand new. So please forgive me in advance for some naivety that I'm not very familiar with the jobs that you do for the town. So I want to take the opportunity to learn a little bit about your position with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then we can get into questions about your business, what you do for a living. Okay?
Okay.
So could you tell me a little bit about what the mission is of the Zoning Board of Appeals?
The Zoning Board of Appeals, when there's a building permit denied,
Okay.
they appeal. And for under certain reasons those are appealed, they come in front of us.
How often does this happen?
Sometimes you get a lot of them, sometimes you don't get any of them. There's no rhyme or reason.
Do you have an estimate? Maybe in a year, in a year, how many do you think
We haven't had a lot lately. It all depends. Honestly, I mean, there's been some years where we have, 20 maybe. I really don't even keep track. I mean, and sometimes
A little over one a month, maybe?
yeah, if that. Sometimes not even that. No, sometimes we have, maybe 3 or 4 a year.
Okay.
And we are scheduled to meet once a month, but we don't often meet that time because we don't have anything, any pending appeals to review.
How many people are on the board?
Okay, so there are 3 full-time members and there are 3 alternate members. All that you can see right on the website. Their names are listed out there.
Okay. Are you the head of it?
I am not the head of it. Rick Surrett is the chairman. I'm the vice chairman.
The vice chair?
Yep.
Okay.
Bob Paulson is the other member, and then there are 3 other alternate members.
Okay, so maybe about one a month to less. So what type of permits are coming before you? What type of permits are these?
Building
Just
permits?
strictly a building permit for construction of a?
Site plan approvals, we would do site plan approvals. It's all in the bylaws as, what the applicants have to do. Sometimes they go to the planning boards for certain types of, subdivisions or things like that, and an A&R lot goes to the planning board. But it's just, for instance, if someone wants to put a shed within 15 feet of the side setback,
Okay,
they have to come to us to get the building inspector will deny them because it's not within the setback, and then they would come to us to put that shed within 5 feet of their property line to their neighbors.
so anybody who's seeking a permit, whether it be a homeowner or a construction company or a contractor,
Yeah,
that,
yep.
okay.
But it's
Excellent.
not a guarantee that they'll go to them. It's just if building inspector.
It's the type of denial the building
Right.
permit, yeah. I mean, in general, zoning boards, we deal with side setbacks, front setbacks, back setbacks. So if there's an existing property, someone wants to put an addition on their home, they're gonna encroach on those setbacks.
Okay.
Then they have to come for a variance, a zoning variance, okay?
Okay.
Zoning variances, if, you have the town center district, if someone wanted to do something outside the ordinary means of the bylaws within that zoning district, they would come to us for those variances.
Okay.
So it's a variance from the standard bylaws that the town has. We hear those. And then also site plan approvals for, like a commercial business come before us for just a site plan approval, not the actual building permit. So it's part of their building permit process. They could still get a building permit without any issues of building the construction, but the site plan approval has to come by us. And then they also have to meet with the conservation commissions and other things like that. But we review like the parking quantity, whereas the conservation commission would just make sure they've got the right amount of drainage and flow and the pavement and things like that,
Okay. Appreciate that. Could you tell us a little bit about your full-time position, what you do?
I own my own electrical contracting company.
Okay. All right. And is there any overlap in the electrical contracting with any of the town boards? Do you have any interaction between what you do during the day and any of the permitting boards?
I don't understand your question.
Do you, in your position as the owner of an electrical contractor,
Yep.
do you ever have a position where you are actually drawing permits from this town?
Yes, I do.
You do. What could you tell us a little bit about that?
When I put an addition on my house, I went and got a building permit and a wiring permit.
But that's for yourself. I'm talking
Yep.
about in your business.
My business, the last permit I pulled in town was for one of the solar projects off of Emerald, down off of Emerald Circle down there. We did a solar project for a company,
Okay.
SED. Yeah.
Okay.
So we installed the solar system.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anybody else?
One question, how long have you been on the zoning board?
2005, so I believe just over 13 years now.
13 years? Thank you.
I have one question, Chris. Could you comment? You made a comment that the ZBA, you haven't been very busy lately. When was the last time you had to convene? Has it been a while?
It's been a while. I didn't make the last meeting, which was probably 3 or 4 months ago, I believe. I don't even remember, to be honest with you, Sheila, off the top of my head. We haven't met in a little while.
I think the reason I'm asking is obviously some communities have very active ZBAs. Do you have any sense of what we're doing, I guess right or wrong, I wouldn't know, to make the ZBA be as able to be inactive as they have been? Because as you stated, the ZBA only activates when it's a necessity because of something having been questioned.
Yeah, I mean, all right, so we were real busy back in the late 2000s, probably that 2007 timeframe, when there was a lot of talk about the 41Bs, those properties there.
Okay.
There was 2 of them that never actually came to fruition, but they spent months, we dealt with them months and months and months on end through the permitting process, and they got all the variances they needed.
Okay.
To do those 41B. They were multi-unit areas. One was one was the Susie's thing right across from the Rutland Heights down there, and then the other one was, I believe, Susie. Dave Lucia. Thank you. Down off of
I remember that.
Campbell Road
Yep.
down there. He had like a 70-acre place down there. So that was really the busy time for us when we were involved in things. And then, honestly, most of it's just 80-90% of it is just an addition on a home. It's a setback issue.
Yep.
They're just encroaching. They want to put a shed, and the guy wants to tuck it tight in the corner of his property. So I mean, if the neighbors don't complain, I mean, this guy's it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward stuff. So, and again, there's really no large commercial construction going on, so there's not really any site plan approvals to really do much of, and that's not any business really, so to speak. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
all right. Just one thing, this whole process, not getting reappointed like that, I just would like to point to the board. I'm not sure I have no problem with the questions that you ask, and new on the board, guys. I'm happy to meet with you, but to not appoint somebody, I think you should have been more proactive about it prior to the appointment, because when you're not appointing anybody right now, we're one person short on that ZBA technically, and just the whole process of, I just think it should have been more forward, should have been done more proactive. Any of these questions really should have gone to the whole board. Like, I'm not the chairman of the board. That should have really gone through him, I feel. And us as a board could have commented, could have put together a memo, could have answered a lot of these questions in much more detail, with a lot more input from the other members, and would have given you new board members here a much better window of what we do and how we do things. And I got to be honest, personally, it was a little insulting not getting reappointed after 13 years of volunteering to the town, and to get shot down like that. I think, in general, when someone doesn't get reappointed, 99% of the time, it's usually because they did something wrong. And the town don't want them no more, something unethical, something, oh boy, you got to get rid of this guy. So just as I run a company, I have 85 employees. I would not do an employee review in a public forum. I would talk to one of my groups and try to get it, more of a private, personal matter. Come to one of our meetings. There was a memo where we had a selectman that was appointed to us as a liaison. If that's changed, we never got the memo. And again, if this is something we could have given you much better feedback, I think. And I think it would have been a much more proactive, more professional way of dealing with your other boards to gain respect and to gain a better relationship to move forward to have things. So I just wanted to comment that I don't really feel it was very professional the way this was handled, and certainly not proactive by any means. But that's all I have to say.
I appreciate that feedback.
Thank you.
I have one comment on that.
Sure, yeah.
We are going to be reintroducing liaisons to some of our committees and groups, specifically for some of those reasons.
Yeah.
We did away with them for a while, but
I mean, honestly, Rick Surratt is one of the nicest guys I know in town. He's a great guy. And if I was the chairman of this board and getting asked, somebody else on this board getting asked without him even I got an email today to redo the ethics thing. And I emailed back, I says, I'm not even reappointed. And Rick was like, what? I mean, he was beside himself. So, but the bottom line is, he's the chairman of the board. Honestly, select board, you owe that chairman a much higher level of respect by asking a lot of these questions to him first. You want to ask something about me personally, no problem. I got no problem coming here, answering those questions about my business. Again, I don't even do any residential work in town. I just do all commercial work all around southern New England. I don't even deal with any of the builders in town. I know some of them I don't even know of. But I'm just telling you, it's really, put a little more thought into it, that's all.
So can I just address, I actually talked with Margaret about that exact issue, and I think going forward for next year, we have, on the calendar already to start meeting with the boards and committees that have people coming up for reappointment and getting any questions that we have out of the way before coming in on the night of reappointment and doing that.
Yeah, I think that's good.
If I could add to that, proactive communication, like you
Absolutely.
mentioned, is critical.
It's the only way to do it.
Yeah,
It's the best way to lead. It's the best way to run something. And if
So-
you want that respect, you give it first. You're the leaders of this town.
Chris, I agree. I was in the office that day when you came in, and I heard every word you said. I really appreciate that you were willing to come back tonight and give us that feedback. We needed to hear it. This is a learning curve as we make some of the changes as we move forward, from being a smaller town to a larger one. And I think the only thing that you and I talked about that I still, we have a hard road to walk there is the whole private conversation thing. Unfortunately, this stuff with our board, with the way we're set up, and that gets back to conflict of interest,
Yeah.
we can't have
Well,
those
again,
private conversations.
memorandums in between boards, there's nothing unethical about that.
No,
It's certainly
but-
open. It's
yeah.
all public. Stuff can be, the responses can be read at these meetings. And again, I'm happy to come to these. But again, if we had, as a board, the zoning board, and probably these other boards, I don't want to speak for them, if we had that proactive comment, we could have come with much more level of detail and given you a much better thing. That's all. I mean, that's the name of the game. Just trying to work with one of the. Hey, there's a lot of great people in this town on these boards, and don't disrespect them. They do a lot of work, and the whole town needs us all.
No disrespect was intended. We did talk, and you could review last month's or the last meeting's discussion on the Channel 191, and you could see we went back and forth about the opportunity to do sidebars and learn a little bit more about each person's involvement with the town, and we did discuss, because of the open meeting law, we're prohibited from doing a lot of those things on the side. We were prohibited from doing an executive session, and I think moving forward, expanding on what Leah said, I think if we could move the bulk reappointments up at least a month so that we're not presented with 100 names on appointment night saying, here's 100 names ready to vote on their reappointment, and then when questions arise, it's already after the fact that their appointments had already expired. So I was surprised to hear that the appointments had already expired, so we didn't really have any push time. So yes, a little bit of a learning curve on there. No disrespect intended by any means. I do fully intend to continue to ask questions upon people that we do entrust in a commission in our town, that we do entrust with an appointment as some sort of a public authority in the town. I still want to maintain that the board reserves the right to ask questions, as you are as an employer of 85 employees at any time. If you have any concerns, you absolutely have the right to ask any of your subordinates, if you will, questions that are on your mind. So I do reserve the right. I think if we moved it up a month for next year, that might.
I was
eliminate
emailed
some-
on May 10th. I responded to that email on May 10th that I would like to be reappointed. I mean, I don't know how much more time you need. I don't know where it went from there. I was responded to on May 21st, that to come in on June, the last week of June. And so again, I mean, that, I don't know,
I think
just so you know.
I think the liaisons are going to help, Chris.
Yeah.
You know, when we got Margaret here, it was very clear that when it came to the professional staff, the hired staff, you no longer needed liaisons, and it was a detriment and not an assist anymore. But when it comes to the elected, in particular, boards and commissions, because to your point, when was the last time, you saw anybody at one of your meetings, as rare as they might be, it's well worth bringing that back.
And
we
I
have-
certainly
we
don't
have it
expect a
better.
select board member there for a shed, variance. I mean, I'm not trying to waste your time either. But, you're always welcome to come down and
Thanks.
see how it goes.
Yeah.
But, if there was something of a larger nature, you might want to come on down. Anyways.
It's been
Thank you.
informative of what you've had to share tonight too. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Well,
that.
thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's go in reverse alphabetical order, and we'll have Mr. Coppola up. And the board did receive a letter of support from the Agricultural Commission, who had initially submitted his name to be the representative from the AgCom to the Earthworks Board. So we just need your name and address, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Glenn Coppola, 126 Main Street.
Does the board have any questions?
Good evening, Mr. Coppola. Could you enlighten me a little bit on, you're on two boards,
Correct.
understanding? The Agriculture Commission and the Earthworks Board. And your position on the Agriculture Commission is because you're a representative of the Earthworks Board representing the Ag Commission. Is that my understanding?
Got that back.
Backwards.
Okay. Okay. Could you tell me a little bit about the two commissions that you serve?
Well, the Agriculture Commission, I've been on that board, I believe, since one term, I think it was 2014, 15, I started. The Agriculture Commission promotes agriculture in our community and preservation of agricultural land.
Okay.
As it enhances the value to the community.
Okay.
And we also can mediate disputes between neighbors and farmers, should that arise at the request of the Board of Selectmen, and offer our opinion on that to the board.
Okay. And how about the Earthworks?
Earthworks Board has been recently created for earth removal, movement of earth in the town, both importing, exporting, and within the town. It comes from previously the Conservation Commission that issued earth removal permits in prior years. We write regulations and currently enforce the current earth removal bylaw.
Okay. How busy are you guys?
Agriculture Commission doesn't have a lot of disputes or anything like that before us, but we're very active in promoting agriculture and what's available to people in agriculture and to the community, and how we can get the community involved in agriculture. The Earthworks Board, we're quite busy because we're trying to draft a new earth removal bylaw, but currently we're working with the existing law, and we may be having some cases come before us regarding earth removal permits very, very shortly. There are several areas in town that have come under question, and we are working with those people and investigating what permits are needed for or they should have.
Okay, we appreciate that. So you're in the farming business?
I'm a part-time or farmer, and I'm in the construction business.
Construction business? What type
Yes.
of construction?
I do general construction. I do move earth on a regular basis. I may be subject to permits in the future. Under the current law, I don't have any earth removal permits pending. I have had an earth removal permit with the town in the past, back in the 90s, late 80s or 90s.
Okay. So you're,
This has been since been terminated.
okay, so your day job is what? What would you say the bulk source of your,
8 hours of my day is definitely contracting, and another 4 hours farming.
okay, so it's the construction, and in your construction actually involves the movement of earth.
It can. We're general contractors.
Okay.
So
As a GQ, do you regularly do business with the town in the permitting? Do you regularly find yourself cutting a check to the town for a permit of some sort?
for septic systems, yes. I do have to draw permits in any town, yes.
The septic?
Yeah.
Okay. And what interaction would you say you have or foresee to have with the earth moving in your day job to what might overlap with what you do in your night job with the earthworks board?
Currently, the way the earth removal bylaw is written, I think the only time that would come up right now is if I was to operate a gravel pit or remove something in that type of an operation.
Okay, and then what would you do in that instance? Would
Oh,
you recuse yourself?
I would have to totally excuse myself from discussions, and
Has that happened in the past? Recusing yourself in the past, have you had to do that before? In any
no,
discussions?
not in any of these situations.
Do you do business with any of the other people? Does your day business do any business with the other people who are regularly drawing permits? The regular construction companies, the regular contractors and builders? Do you do any partnerships with them?
Not currently, and a lot of times it would be on a limited basis, and it would probably not involve earth removal.
Okay.
But again, it is a line I do have to watch.
Okay, so anything that what's the name of your company?
Raymond Contracting.
Anything Raymond Contracting has to do with any of the other builders that would come before the earthworks board, you would recuse yourself from? If you had any overlaps, if you did some work for, XYZ construction here in town, building a house, that ended up going before the earthworks board seeking a permit of something like that, even though it wasn't Raymond Construction seeking the permit, but you did a business relationship with them, would that be a situation where you would recuse yourself from?
Yes, I believe it would. And
Okay.
again, anything that comes up like that, I would check with ethics and
Okay.
make sure.
You do that? Have you done that?
Have I done the ethics thing? Yes.
You've checked with them? Okay. I guess as long as there's a checks and balance, that we do make sure that there isn't any overlap for the town, for the commission itself, for the individual. Comments?
Mr. Coppola, I will disclose to the public, and I did contact the Ethics Commission today, that I am not an official abutter, but I am a nearby neighbor of another property that Mr. Coppola owns in town. Could you tell us a little bit about the other property in town?
Yes, I own about 100 acres off of Palmagussit Road. 112. Large portion of that is zoned. Large portion of that is zoned business. I operate my construction company out of there, and I also farm a portion of that property.
Is any of that property under 61A right now?
No, it's not.
Is that going to be developed? Do you have property in town that you anticipate being developed? You anticipate?
I can't There are no current plans for development.
Okay. Thoughts, discussion?
If I could, through the chair, I just want to make note that the Ethics Commission actually does put out disclosure forms for various purposes. One of them is on a perception of conflict of interest, just a mere perception of conflict of interest. And, you know, for instances like this, it might be advisable for anyone who sits on a board or committee, appointed or elected, to take a look at those forms and file those with the appointing authority, or in the case of elected officials, with the town clerk, just to protect oneself.
Right. Can we take the easy one, Mr. Senecal?
I think we have one
Well, we have one more to hear from.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Coppola at the moment? Thank you.
No.
Appreciate you coming out, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
And Mr. Delaquila.
Evening.
Evening, sir.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record, and then you can tell us a little bit about your...
Joseph Delaquila, 16 Molten Mill Road, Rutland, Mass. I'm chairman of Rutland Conservation Commission. Or was.
Could you tell me a little bit about the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, conservation commissions were created by state law back in 1974 with the advent of the Wetlands Protection Act, and then later followed up with the River Protection Act. What that does, it regulates generally the first 100 feet of area bordering a swamp, wetland, lake, stream, river, whatever you want to call it. And what that is, it's a buffer, it's known as a buffer zone. If activities are proposed inside that buffer zone, like building, then they have to, whoever is going to do the work, the owner of the property, has to file what they call a notice of intent. That notice of intent is filed concurrently with the Conservation Commission in the given town. It also is filed at the same time with the Department of Environmental Protection. Right? The Conservation Commission takes it under review. DEP does the same thing. We generally invite the applicant in to give us a thumbnail of exactly what they're proposing to do. We call that a submission. And we schedule with them to go out and take a site walk. All right, generally, we walk through the muck, the mud, the brush before any work is done. So we go through some pretty treacherous terrain every once in a while. Biggest danger we face is probably ticks. I've got a collection. But actually, most of the site walks lately have been in the rain on top of it, just the way it worked out. What happens then is we schedule a hearing, a public hearing, all right, where the applicant has to notify all of his abutters. Abutters are defined by 100 feet of, within 100 feet of any property boundary that's under consideration. Those people then can come to an open hearing. All of our meetings are open. The hearing cannot be held until the DEP has had an opportunity to review the same project. Generally, they do a paperwork review, making sure that the application is complete and correct. Then they'll put it up on their grids and see if it overlaps any other property or other areas of concern, like natural heritage for endangered species of plants, DCR for Zone A for drinking water requirements, stuff like that. DCR's reach is out to 400 feet. Ours is only the first 100. They will issue a project number. I don't know if you ever noticed when you see a project going on, there'll be a little sign out there.
Yep.
For Rutland, the first 3 digits are always 277. That designates the town. The last 4 is the project number. And right now we're up to 0518. Yeah, okay. That's how many projects we've had since the inception of the commission, because it's kept on record, on file with DEP. We will issue an order of conditions after all of those things happen. The order of conditions is generally, we attempt to keep people at least 25 feet away. Sometimes that's not possible because of a lot configuration or something like that, and we have allowed things to be closer than that, but they generally have to present a pretty good reason for it. There's no bylaw currently, town bylaw, that says it's a no, any part of a buffer is a no-touch. Generally, we find no-touch areas when you're talking with DCR, where they have a 200-foot boundary that might be no-touch. But again, that's qualified by calling it Zone A, which is drinking water. We issue the order of conditions. That starts the clock ticking for a 21-day appeal period. All right, any group of residents, 10 residents in a given town, don't have to be abutters, can appeal that ruling to DEP. DEP can also appeal that ruling. They have the benefit of our order of conditions basically before anyone else. And they review that against what they consider to be standard or normal practice. If they see something outside of that, then they would, their activity would then be a superseding order of conditions, where they would actually replace the Conservation Commission. Not a good situation for that to happen because you lose control of your project, whatever it may be, whether it's a subdivision or even just a house lot. Doesn't happen very often. The other reason they'll write a superseding order of conditions if there are things involved in there that are outside of the purview of the Conservation Commission. Bryce Lemon was a good example of that, where there were things there that they had to jump through, some additional hoops for Indian artifacts and things of that nature. It was kind of esoteric stuff that the Conservation Commission has no purview over that. So in the case like that, DEP would step in, write a superseding order of conditions, which they very rarely actually change what we originally write. What they'll do then is add on the additional stuff that falls outside of our purview. That's about it. I mean, we're fairly busy.
Yeah, sounds it.
Not every lot in town comes before us. Only the lots that have an activity that might be within 100 feet of a BVW, bordering vegetated wetland, is what the technical term is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Anybody have questions? Are there any neighboring communities that have town bylaws in regards to conservation and wetlands protection?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Is it something that,
We tried that in town. We had a couple of bylaws go forward, and they were resoundingly rejected at town meeting.
when was that?
Oh, that was way back in my beginnings. That's better than 15 years ago. Might be time to try again. I mean, I'm not averse to it. I'll tell you a little story, if you got a second. We've been in town, my family and I moved to town from the UK in 1996. We used to sit out on the back deck. We weren't originally going to move to Rutland. We were actually looking at Hubbardston, and it just happened to be passing through Rutland. We said, well, let's check that out. And the house fit the bill. I mean, what we needed for, the number of children we've got and dogs and what have you. And we can remember sitting out on the back deck, and it was actually an event when somebody went by on Palmagussit Road. I'm sure some people here can remember those days. Today it's 24/7. I mean, and it's crazy. The thing that drives me crazy is that trucks with all the Jake brakes coming down the hill. I hate those Jake brakes. Hope there's some contractors here listening.
Excuse me.
But there's no law against it.
Through the chair, Joe, do you recall what those bylaws were that were proposed 15 years ago?
It actually moved the protected zone out to the maximum and even a little beyond. It also sought to regulate any materials that would be used, right? Because there are a lot of situations in town where houses sit inside that 100-foot zone. And that bylaw sought to regulate what kind of paint you could use on your house. It sought to regulate what time of year you could paint. There were a whole host of what kind of fertilizer you could use on your lawn. I mean, we do regulate somewhat on that, on the fertilizer side of things. We will make recommendations. We can't necessarily enforce it because it's not a bylaw. But in some cases where we've had houses close to a wetland, we would ask them not to use exceptionally strong fertilizers. Generally, they don't need it when they're that close. The other thing that we would ask, we've asked people in the past, is on swimming pools that they don't discharge the backwash from a swimming pool directly into a wetland. Because you're adding, most pools are chlorinated. Not all of them, some of them use ozone. But on the chlorinated ones, we ask them not to discharge to the wetland because the chlorine is killing the bugs, and that's what we're trying to maintain.
I have a follow-up. Is Concom, or has Concom recently been looking into potential local bylaws then that would be more stringent than the Wetlands Protection Act, or
We've
would
had some
enhance it?
discussions, off-record discussions, one-on-one. Peter and I have had discussions. Nothing formal. I'm waiting to see. I'd like to wait and see how the earth removal bylaws fall out, or whatever regulations they're doing, so that we avoid conflict, number one, or potential conflicts. Not when I say conflict, not conflict of interest. I'm talking about conflict of intent of the law or the regulation. So I'd like to wait until that settles out. We've had violations in town that we've gone to DEP for. I got to tell you, dealing with DEP in the past was not a good experience. It was generally very good old boy network setup. And on the last go-around with their early retirements and buyouts that the state did, a lot of those folks went. We've got people in the Wetlands Division now that are younger, very much more knowledgeable. They don't have agendas or things that they try to force down your throat. They go by the book, which is the only way to go, as far as I'm concerned.
What's your background?
I was regional, Northeast Region Facilities Director for BICC Cables. They were the largest wire and cable manufacturer in the United States. We had 57 plants, 26 in the United States, and the rest spread about through probably another 20 countries. I'm an engineer by trade, electrical engineer by trade.
Thank you.
And how long have you been on Concom?
15 years.
I just had one question. You answered most of the questions I could have thought of, but who delineates, or how is it delineated, the boundary of wetlands? Who determines?
Generally, the owner will have already prepared a plan showing the delineation. He will hire an engineer or a wetland scientist to prepare a plan. At that point, that plan comes to us with the submission. And what we do is we do a site walk to compare the conditions in the field to what they're describing on the paper. Once in a while on small stuff, homeowner wants to put an addition on a house, or he wants to build a deck, and he just happens to fall in that zone. We won't run him through all the hoops. We'll go out, take a look, and see where he is, what he needs. If he needs paperwork, we'll work with him to complete that paperwork and keep him, out of trouble. It's something, a homeowner doesn't generally have the resources that a developer or a contractor does. And they're usually kind of lost when they first approach us. Right? A lot of times they don't even know us or what we do until they apply for a building permit, and the building inspector says, well, you got to see Concom. They have to sign off on this. I mean, the e-permitting that that's coming, hopefully will streamline a lot of that. Right now, it's kind of handwritten stuff, but that has tightened up quite a bit on things slipping through the cracks.
Have you had cause or ability to have to hire your own professionals when it comes to getting a second opinion on some of the wetlands delineation?
Absolutely. We did that on the Bryce Lemon Estates. It was done on Bear Hill. It was done on the Susie project. Well, it wasn't the Susie project at the time down on Palmagussit. We hired Ecotech. There's 5 lots down there. That was originally a fellow by the name of Kevin Houghton, who came before us to build houses there. The original plan was for 5 duplex houses there. And I got to tell you, we looked at that and we went, didn't look good. The lots are ugly lots. I mean, no, I'm not trying to slam any of the builders or anything, but they're ugly lots. We hired Ecotech, Mr. Art Allen, who was a wetland scientist, came out and verified what their engineer had already drawn up. And we went out and verified, and that plan was approved. DEP approved it, we approved it. The building permits were issued. And coincidentally, what stopped that from happening was a sewer moratorium, actually. The guy had his permits, I guess, and he waited too long to apply for his sewer hookup. And the lots were ruled out for any kind of septic systems. He had to have public sewer on them. And when he was presented with all of that, he thought he was going to be able to run a pipe all the way down Palmagussit Road and tie these houses in. He was not in a position, he was the guy was a finished carpenter that was aspiring to become a builder. And he did not have the financial backing and ended up abandoning that project. I mean, on top of the fact that the way that the lots were drawn up, looked like a jigsaw puzzle to meet all of the requirements of, frontage and setback and square footage. And it was a really bad plan.
I apologize. Did you have a follow-up?
Jim Susie ended up with the property and proposed basically the same thing, 5 single-family houses this time instead of 5 duplexes. So a single-family house consumes a little less space, number one. And you've only got 1 driveway to deal with per house instead of 2, because we also have to take into account impervious surfaces. We did a site walk out there with their engineer because we already had a plan that had been approved showing the delineation. The engineer that happened to do the work for the original contractor and for Mr. Susie was the same engineer. So he already had all of that information. All we did was go out and verify that the conditions on the site had not changed. We did that by doing test bores along the line, and then it becomes, the test bore is a definitive way to determine the boundary between a wetland and what is known as an upland. And it's just a matter of digging the soil out 18 inches down, pulling it up and comparing it to a Munsell color chart. And that line didn't change, so we went along with it.
Thank you. Ecotech's done a lot of peer review for us over the years, yes?
Excuse me?
Ecotech has done a lot of peer review.
Yes.
Gary, have they worked for us too?
Yes. Yes, they have.
Thank you.
One clarification on that. When we did the peer reviews for Bryce Lemon, Ecotech did not work for the Conservation Commission. Quinn Engineering worked for the Conservation Commission. Quinn Engineering subcontracted Ecotech for that particular project. Just so
Have you, over the years, felt the absence of a conservation agent? Do you feel it has affected the way conservation is able to function?
We've been fortunate. Number one, I'm retired. I've been retired since 2003, since before 2003. So my time is pretty much available. So if somebody has a question, I have no problem going out and taking a look for somebody. Or if somebody has a complaint, I'll answer the complaint for them. My time has been, pretty free. I'm lucky enough to have the freedom to devote to it. A conservation agent is an additional cost. They don't necessarily come cheap. We did have the opportunity to have a conservation agent for another town move into town. And she expressed an interest in getting on the Conservation Commission. I had met her once prior to her seeking an appointment to the Conservation Commission, and that was she had some questions about some wetlands behind her house. And she saw the ad on the website that we had an opening, and she sent me a message asking me if she should apply for it, if we would be interested in having her. I said, sure. She's a conservation agent. Towns pay for this kind of talent. I mean, if we can get it on a volunteer basis, heck, go for it.
Thank you. Anyone? We all?
Nope.
We're all set. Thank you very much. I will make one statement before we move forward on this topic, and then we'd like to keep going with the meeting. We have a lot to cover tonight. I had a really valid question regarding this process, and obviously Mr. Senecal brought up some valid questions as well, but I do want to address this one. It really made a lot of sense, and it merited public discussion. And it was a question of, why would you ever question anyone who applies to be on a board or committee or commission? What are you doing? And the fact of the matter is that when you don't like what we do, you vote us out. And that's the end of it. When it comes to these appointed boards, committees, commissions, we're your gauntlet. And I think sometimes communities that are growing like we're growing spend a lot of years being in the position of beggars can't be choosers. Certainly we see communities out there where these positions are competed for. It's a competitive process. And communities where those positions are requested to have background in the areas that they're going to be working in, whether it's a specialty or a professional experience. And we're clearly, we're going through so many growing pains in the past couple of decades. I think this is one of them, but it was a valid question, and I think that's where we are now. And I think it's why, especially with the two new board members, we did have questions come up when it comes to what the makeup is of some of these boards, committees, commissions, and what our role is in that. So we appreciate those questions. We appreciate the comments. The question was, who were you to not say yes to everyone, I guess was the question. Valid question. I'm sorry. I'm not really going to take any comments quite yet. It's not yet public comment. I will take a quick comment from Gary, or we're going to move on.
We'll move on quickly. Quick comment. I just want to actually it's more for Jeff and Leah than it is the rest of the board. But I'd like you guys to know, especially that I've worked with these three gentlemen since I've been to town. And I've not seen three more, and I first of all respect and honor them for their volunteerism, but also for their knowledge. Joe and Conservation even has to work with me as far as Chapter 90 work for an environmental punch list, wetland problems, flagging on different farms or different projects we've looked at. Certainly Mr. Senecal with his work with the youth fields and what he's done. I'm not going to say we, but we've worked very well together. He's helped me tremendously, all volunteerism. I thank you for that, Chris, and you know that I mean that. And Mr. Coppola, who has, I don't know if he's right now doing any work for contractors in town, but he has in the past, and he has always been there with the permit to find out what he needed, and if something was missing, we worked well together to get it taken care of. So just for Leah and Jeff, just so you know, certainly these three gentlemen, as well as the 100+ volunteers that you stated were on the appointment list, certainly have my respect, all of them. I hope you're moving for reappointment and get this out of the way.
Thank you for your comment. At this time, the board can take any action, or we can move ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that you appoint these three people to the job that they were supposed to be appointed for back when this whole thing started.
And is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? So that's for all three.
All three.
Well, two of them, we asked to get pushed back, based on questions. The third one, Mr. Delaquila, was at the chair's request to take a different direction. So do we want to have different direction in that particular commission? So there's actually two different
Okay, so,
reasons,
Skip,
yeah.
with, based on that comment, with your permission, would you like to do these
I'll
individually?
I'll reframe my motion to accept Chris Senecal and Glenn Koppler. Or
Well, let's
reappoint
just, do you mind let's just go one at a time, since we've had all three come in and they were nice enough to speak to us. You can start with
Okay,
whoever you
I'll
like.
Start with Chris Senecal.
Okay.
I make a motion to reappoint him to the, whatever he's on.
second.
Whatever.
Would you like to be appointed to?
I love it.
And there we go.
I'll second it.
Is there any more comment regarding Chris? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Chris, thank you for
Thank you
your
for coming
comments.
in. No disrespect intended.
And thank you for the feedback, because it's important for us to hear it also, so I appreciate it.
All right, do we have any more
I'd like to
motions?
recommend I would like to make a motion to appoint Glenn Koppler to the Agriculture Commission and the Board of, Earthworks Board.
So it's, hold on, can we, it's only Earthworks. Agricultural Commission appointment was not up. It's only the
I thought it was
Earthworks.
up. No,
was.
AgCom,
Yes, it was
we
up.
held
His
both.
name was on twice.
His
we
name
held
was
both.
on
Held him
twice.
on both?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was on both.
Yeah, we did.
All right.
Second.
Are there any comments? Okay, I will give one comment in regards to Earthworks. Again, full disclosure, I do live across the street from one of the properties that he owns in town. I was provided, when I moved into the community, a very large file. I do have concerns from a town perspective that that property has significant issues that have not been addressed. And should the town have to take that property on as a responsibility, it might be an area of concern. The property has been subject to a cease and desist for industrial removal of topsoil from the property. They have also been indicated by DCR for wetlands filling. At this point, in regards to earthworks only, I think Mr. Coppola is simply in a situation where he just may have too many conflicts for the other things that come up. He has been bringing materials in for many years now at various times of the day and night. I have no knowledge or sense of what those materials are. Obviously, that's part of why we have an earthworks board that was just begun. I am going to not vote on this motion, but I did want to bring that information to the board's awareness, and the folder is here if anybody would like to review it. Could you run that? So I will not vote.
Okay. Motion's been made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
You have to vote something or
I know.
abstain, sorry.
No,
I'm
no,
gonna
no.
abstain.
Can I ask for clarification, or not, since it's already in vote?
Clarification on the motion?
I don't know.
The motion was to appoint him to the Earthworks Board. It was seconded.
Right.
There was 2 yeas, 2 abstentions, and,
I'll vote yay.
okay,
All right, thank you.
so it passes 3 yeas, 2 abstentions.
So do you want to make the appointment for the,
He needs to go for AgCom also, correct?
that's right. Am I going to
Yep, go ahead.
make another motion to appoint him to Agricultural Commission? I move to take a motion to appoint Glenn Koppler to the Agricultural Commission.
Second.
Any comments before we vote? No? All
No
those in
problem.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
4 ayes, 1 abstention.
All right, and is there any more action by the board?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Joe Delaquila. You said we do them one at a time.
Yep.
To the Conservation Commission.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion?
I'd like to hear from the chair on, does the board want, is it in the best interest of this board to seek a different direction of the Conservation Commission? That was the question for the step back,
Right.
not his potential conflict of interest.
I think at this point, my only, and this would not be me giving an opinion, but as the chair would be to counsel all members as they vote to take a look at history, what we have in front of us, and what we want to see happening moving forward. But I think that would be the same counsel we would have to give for every board, commission, and committee, so I don't know how helpful that is for you. We've obviously had a little time to do our own research, to look at minutes, to do whatever we needed to do. So in the absence of any other questions, there's a motion and a second. And then further discussion if you'd like it.
Well, I mean, do you have an opposing argument to present
To an appointment?
to an appointment?
You know, I listened to Mr. Delaquila. He obviously has 15 years worth of stories and experience to tell us, and there's certainly been big issues over the years that he's been on Conservation Commission. I think that the absence of a conservation agent is something I probably disagree with him on. I don't know that the town has benefited over the years from having volunteers take on professional roles. I think our board is a perfect example of that, and the difference we saw when Margaret came on. So that would be a major change, at least for me, in terms of direction. I have a different outlook as well, and this is not just conservation, but when it comes to bylaws and the presentation of things at town meeting, generally speaking, when something fails, it fails because there's something wrong with it, but not because the idea itself is wrong. And so to have a commission or committee that's willing to sort of put the work in, do the tweaks, present it again, find out what was wrong, if it was in the best interest of a town. So I think that's a bit of a difference in opinion that I would have.
So what are you saying is in the best interest of the town here? As far
I would
as
like
the-
to see conservation move in a different direction personally. That's not a personal comment on any member, past, present, or future, other than to say that if we were able to get more people like the most recent applicant we had, who is a conservation agent herself, as he actually mentioned, it brings us more in line with some of the communities that are seeing more competitive processes when it comes to these appointments, where they're outright saying what they want is somebody with this background, that background. We've not, a small town does not have that luxury, and you learn as you go. We all do the same thing. And to Chris's point again, we owe a huge, and I think Gary mentioned it too, a huge debt of gratitude to the people who do put in the hours that they do.
Of course.
I just have a question for the board. Is there another way to accomplish moving the Conservation Commission in a different direction other than through, the appointment process?
Is there a way to realign the chair?
Well, I think
Is
they
there-
may have reorganized already.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is, do we want to micromanage? Because that's the next, and maybe it's a temporary situation, but to start mandating that you want a conservation agent or whatever
I
the
think-
long list is.
Or just
Th-
goals,
th-
or just goals and objectives.
Sure.
Something as simple as that. There was a discussion about bylaws and maybe just a simple review of potential bylaws and things.
And I think reintroducing the liaison is gonna be a step forward in that direction. Or would happen as a step forward.
Who selects the chair? What's the process for,
They vote for
Boards,
themselves.
They do that.
yep.
I think Sean has something he wants to say. Yeah.
Yes, if I may, through the chair.
Can you name and
Sean
address?
Moore,
Thank you.
3 Edson Avenue. On the Conservation Commission, I was just gonna state that Joe has the confidence of the board itself. When it came time to appoint a chair, when he was up, the board itself voted to have Joe stay as the chair, so he has full confidence of the board. And so it's, in our opinion, he's doing a good enough head job, I would say.
So, I'm sorry, did you vote
For
in
Joe,
this past month
To be reappointed.
to be reappointed.
and to be made chair?
When did,
We
when
have not,
discussion,
we have not reorganized this fiscal.
it was in discussion when we decided who wants to be chair. We all felt Joe has the experience and does a great job at doing it.
That was everybody? That was unanimous, you said?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I can't speak for other members that they're not here, but I would say that I will go on record that not one member gave a nay as wanting him to run. Like, no one else stepped forward to say, I want the job.
Are we opening up the public comment on this?
I hadn't planned to, no, and we're running really, really, really late.
I have a question.
I have a motion and a second, just to answer your question fully. I have a motion and a second, so at this point, it really is supposed to be board discussion. I did recognize a member of the committee that we're talking about.
I have a question. There's no, boards and commissions are set on to organize themselves however they want. There's no mandate that they need to change chairs every year or
Unless there's
3
some
or 5
statutory mandate
years.
or
Right.
bylaw
There's-
mandate, which I'm not aware of.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, the ayes have it.
Okay.
We're gonna-
The ayes have it?
The ayes have it.
Okay.
We're going to move on. Thank you all for coming in, and before everybody makes a mass exodus to leave, we do have a little bit different way we're going to run the meeting tonight. We were hoping to do a roundtable with Rutland Youth Sports, and we have the other room set up, so we are hoping to briefly recess, have that meeting. We'll come back in for our more, what you would hope is more boring business. I had some grand plan that we would actually get that done before 7. Clearly, that's not happening because it's two-sided tonight. Before we move, before we recess, I just want to do one thing. I know some people won't be staying with us. And as some of you might know, this is not technically Margaret's last meeting, but her last meeting with us as a full-time employee. So I do have a statement to read. On Monday, January 29th, 2007, Rutland voters at a special town meeting approved for the first time the hiring of Rutland's first ever town administrator. You can look up that landmark article online. There were some interesting voices who were strongly against it, mostly for financial reasons. But the one comment that I will quote, because I don't often get the opportunity to quote the then chair of the selectmen, Louis Carnacchioli, was absolutely prescient. He said, "Will the time ever be right financially? We could be standing here 2 years from now saying the time isn't right. Now is the time. In fact, we're 5 years behind. If we had a town administrator here now, we would be closing the gap on the deficit." He said the town administrator would investigate new ways of bringing money to the town, would be cost effective in the long run, almost paying for his or her salary. And he added that an administrator would represent Rutland at important regional and state level meetings. But the position, though it was approved, was unfunded, and it remained unfunded until even those naysayers had to say that the town couldn't wait any longer. So on April 27th, 2015, after a months-long search, Margaret signed a 3-year contract with Rutland. She was to officially start on June 1st, but she attended the May 9th annual town meeting, and that, I think, was the first sign we had that we had hired someone special. By the way, if you're following along, her finally being hired happened over 8 years after the town approved the position. And in retrospect, it's an interesting exercise to wonder how much she could have done for us had she been hired when Louis said we should have had someone way back in 2002. Margaret spent much of her early time here putting out active fires and tamping out issues that had been simmering for years, and she could have spent all of her time doing that. But instead, she somehow managed to also drag the town of Rutland out of some of its own ways. She managed our money. She managed to professionalize the way we do things. There is not one department she didn't assist, help with a project, find grant money for, or provide leadership to. The list is too long to even begin, and I could never do it justice because some of the seemingly smallest things she did ended up meaning so much. Under her leadership, this town has moved in the right direction, has seen the results of truly professional management, her management, and our staff, in our policies, and in our bottom line. Her dedication and conscientiousness is unparalleled. Margaret has pushed this town as close as she could get us onto the straight and narrow in her too short time here. They say everybody is replaceable, and I don't always believe that. Some people are harder to replace than others. It's hard to imagine how the town of Rutland could have ever done better than having Margaret Nardowitz as its first ever, and still as of tonight only, town administrator. And my only regret is that we could not keep her longer. So I have to hope not only that this board can find a permanent replacement that can fill some very big shoes, but that we as a board and as a town can continue the work she has started for us and continue to foster and grow the culture of professionalism, civility, and community that she espoused, exemplified, and tried to expand every single day she was here. The town of Rutland owes Margaret Nardowitz, our first town administrator, an enormous debt. Margaret, please accept our sincere and bottomless thanks for everything you did for us in the short time that we were fortunate enough to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So, in closing, what do you get for the person for whom money is not the object, and the person who's a stickler for the rules and is very fiscally conservative and who rarely sits down, so a personalized bench didn't seem like the way to go. This seems like far too little. We did have a conflict of interest law to think about, which of course you made us all do, and so each of us have something small to give you from the town of Rutland. We will pass these out. We will start with a few postcards that the Rutland Historical Society found for me, including, most especially, the one of the beautiful Town Hall Annex that I know she will miss desperately in
going
her
up on my wall. I'm
fancy
framing
digs
that.
in Amherst. That's where we will start. Can you just show her what you're giving her? I know it's your first time sort of seeing it.
I've got the Rutland beauty. Beauty. Oh.
4th of July committee, who thanks you for being
All
a,
you can imagine.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I judged floats my first month into the job, and I judged floats on my month prior to going out. So, and I thoroughly enjoyed it all.
And this is a Mushkapog House and Hotel Bartlett tapestry.
bag.
Oh, sorry.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And the History of the Town of Rutland by Mrs. Murphy,
Ooh.
former librarian herself, in
Thank
a
you very
font too small to read.
Thank you very much.
And there's no alcohol allowed in public buildings otherwise.
There'd be a drink.
Yeah.
But I want to thank the board and everyone in this great community. I've been honored and privileged to serve the town of Rutland, and I do know that it is on the right path. It recognizes that it's growing, and it's going to start proactively addressing these issues. So I'm very proud to have served the town.
All right.
Thank you.
We are recessing for 3 minutes, and we are reconvening in the small meeting room. Thank you very much.
We have enough communication, and we're all in it for the right reasons. We're all in it to move it forward for kids in town, and there's no competing, because we all want it for the right reasons.
Quick question. Are you in need right now of going outside the town to play some of your games because you just don't have?
So I'll say this. So
space?
we go and compete in Holden for fall ball in town, in part because they've always had the league, and we've never had that much interest. When I look back and I say, not too long ago we were putting one team in Holden, and this year we had 60 kids that we have, and we still had to cut 4 kids. And I think we'd have even more sign up to play in town. And we're getting to the point where that if we played in town, we'd have more kids, I think, playing in the fall. It's having the flexibility to do that. And I think if it was just in town, we'd get even more people. I'll tell you right now, it stinks when you got to cut 4 kids, and 4 kids cannot play baseball this fall because we didn't have we couldn't put another team into Holden. We couldn't. We had to cut 4 kids. It's the only time we cut kids.
I'd just like to make one comment to Wayne Sting.
part of the biggest problem is also the practice time. We can get the games in because you have to. I can't tell you how many seasons I haven't had a practice before my first game in softball. I literally, the last 2 years, have rented gym space in other towns to get the kids practicing. The developmental part of that's what recreation sports is all about, is getting, it's being annihilated by not having the field space. You cannot practice with these kids and develop them and prepare them for games to be successful. That's the biggest issue, and that, I think, the reason why Karina may not know about the issuing is that these problems are within each group. You know, coaches fighting for time on field space, sharing like the Central Tree soccer field, the main field there are 3 and 4 teams practicing. There are 40 kids, 60 kids on that field some nights. So that, I think those are some of the huge issues. I've been involved with trying to develop fields for 15 years here. I've been coaching for 15 plus years. It's just these kids are just getting robbed, honestly.
And then much use of the field.
Right.
Hurts the field too.
Oh, it's awful.
Right.
Look at Central Tree Field. It does not get a rest.
So, and we just to kind of jump onto the point, it's the same's true in soccer in the spring. We can't host games in town, and we struggle for practice space, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same story in the opposite season.
Right. In baseball, you get one practice a week. That's it. And if it rains on your day to practice, forget it. You're done. You're going into the next week with more games and no practice time. We, I think, might have single-handedly kept Holden baseball in business this year with the amount of time, the amount of Rutland money that got sunk into the CRA facility. I'm not kidding. Every single hour.
We would call. The coaches would call to rent the indoor space, and they would say, "This team has it. This team has it. This team has it," and it would be all the Rutland teams. We paid Holden's baseball a lot of money that's out of parents' pockets. This wasn't included. You know, coaches would pay out of their pocket, and parents would chip in to help to get that extra time.
Totally dating myself. You know, in Seinfeld, the Newman, right?
Yeah.
That's what I feel about Holden sometimes. By the
Right.
way, I have many friends in Holden. Like, yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Holden,
They got us again. They got us again.
Okay.
Couldn't agree more.
I don't want to lose Karina before asking you a few more questions. I'm going to put you on the spot, Jonathan, for one more thing, but I want to give you a second to think about it. And of course, we have Chris here too, which is huge. The last time this got talked about, there were plans that were kind of thrown out for a couple more field locations. Let's assume those particular locations are off the table. Can you give us an ideal, other than those, where you think 2 more 60-foot diamonds would go? Don't answer yet. I'm going to go to Karina. Karina, other than, obviously, we're really focused on soccer and baseball, softball, what else are we looking at? I mean, there's been talk of skateboard, right? You and I have talked multiple times about where to put.
Yes. The skate park, like, are you talking like recreation needs?
Yes.
Or
yes. I mean, for example, the basketball court looks lovely, but has no fencing. Because we had to take it down. So that limits basketball to a point. It makes them run more.
Oh, yeah. So the skate park, really anything for a teen and youth and teen demographic, because you only have to drive by Memorial Field on a nice half day to realize there's nothing for teenagers to do in this town except climb the dugouts in Memorial Field. It's really like the main activity. You go to Dunkin' Donuts, you get your colada, you climb the dugouts in Memorial Field. It's really like sad. It's very sad. So, anything we do, thanks to the nonprofits, we serve the athletic kids pretty well. There's really nothing for anybody else.
So as far as space considerations, from where you're coming from, to your point about the kids who maybe are not doing a traditional team sport, skate park, the basketball,
skate park, any kind of rec center, like any sort of facility that youth and teens could come into, have a space to do age-appropriate activities that are relatively constructive, or at least not destructive. It's an age group that's near and dear to my heart. I was just talking about how amazing my teens at camp are. Like, they're really fabulous, but their energies need to be channeled. And if we're not providing something in our community for them, if we're leaving them out of every conversation, we are only contributing to society's problems across the board. And that's sad. That's sad. So, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. All right, I'm back to where do you put 260? Yes, Chris, you have an answer?
No, well, I do, but I I would just like to propose something to the group, that I really feel that this town needs a committee to collectively put together a long-term plan. We don't have enough space now. You got 4 more hundred houses coming in. You need a long-term plan here, and there's a lot of faces in this room that it's here. The committee's in this room right now. You don't have to go outside these walls. We got the people who've had the history. We got the people, you know, a select board member jump on this committee with us so that they're in tune with everything every step of the way. We can meet twice, you know, a month or something like that. We can develop a full-scale town plan. You know, talk with some of these different, you know, these people. We're so micro right now. We got to get macro. You got to look at the big picture here and put a good plan together. A lot of these guys here got some great ideas, and if they want to move forward with them, this committee and the select board, we can support these guys and get it rolling right away.
So am I hearing of Parks and Rec Commission? Yeah.
Well, there was the town.
I'm not trying to make big government. I'm just
review.
trying to get some volunteers in here just to put a good grip together. I think there's all the answers are in this room. We just gotta sit down and get it prioritized, set some short-term, long-term goals, and get this thing rolling. It's so close, it's not funny. It's right there.
I feel that we have so many builders building houses and making lots of money on our town, and that's great for them. But, you know, they could be giving back by,
And they
you
will.
know.
And the 2 field proposals I've put together, okay, over the last 15 years, I have had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of site work,
Right.
all ready to go.
Yeah.
I've already did it down at Glenwood Road. I mean, Mark Sinkwich, he was down there with his equipment for, I mean, these guys are there. You call on them, they'll be there for you.
Yeah.
The last proposal we had a lot of money already raised outside before going to anybody in the town. I mean, the resources, this town, the strength of this town is the people in it. We can build anything. And the great people here willing to do anything they can for the kids. That is like the least of my concern is being involved in this town with fields over 15 years. That is not an issue.
And
You just need a plan. You guys need a plan that we all can agree on.
Yeah.
And just cut these guys loose, man. Look out. Get out of their way.
We just need a plan. We can all of us can. It'll be good. It'll be fine.
Well, now that we know what we need to do.
I know.
Right, so just, I mean, Sheila's alluded to it now and Chris has alluded to it now. Chris and I, and one other guy, started a nonprofit in town almost 2 years ago now, and had over $100,000 raised to build a mixed-use park in town. And it didn't get passed. The RDIC approved it. It was for space on the Rutland Heights land. It didn't knock it by the select. So when we start talking about what people are willing to do, I mean, it's not often that a group comes to you and says, here's $100,000, we're going to build a mixed-use park for public use, and the town says no. And so, you know, that's when I say this is 3 years in a row now we're coming to these meetings. You've got people in town who are motivated to get this done.
I appreciate being thrown under the bus. Thank you.
But I did not say you. I said the board.
No, it's me. It's fine. It's me too. I voted. For the record, I stand by that, and I apologize. I know why you wanted it. We just can't take the one parcel that even Jay Ash from the governor's office says is our one salable parcel because of its frontage on Maple Avenue, and give it over to public use when we think that that's the most commercially viable parcel. It was my only hang up. It was everybody's hang up, I think.
And so my only response to that is the set of plans that you have for the RDIC on the town website actually show that piece of land as recreation. So I would say take it off the website.
Okay.
Because if we're going to sit there and say it's not the right piece, then we shouldn't put the plan out there that shows it as the right piece.
So that said, the town, I have the list of all town parcels. Some obviously have buildings on them, some are land, and it doesn't look like much, but all the green shaded areas are town-owned parcels. And the town owns 51, I have a list here of 51 parcels. So some may be kind of that low-hanging fruit, land that's already cleared, that could be prime agricultural lands, but then there's other land that's wooded, so the town has to decide, you know. Some of it may be wooded, but abutting some already used recreation. The Marsh Field, that particular parcel and the abutting parcel, they're in the town center. There are acres and acres there, but it may require some work to prepare.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You said, yes, ideally that we build around Marshfield and use the resources that are available there to tap into. It's much easier to run more electricity over electricity that already exists. Obviously, we have the snack shack there. There's a shed there. There's all of our equipment is at Marshfield. And, well, I shouldn't say all of it. Some equipment's at Marshfield. We have other resources in other places for other fields. But yeah, obviously, like we'd like the space behind the right field wall. that's great. There's enough space to put a 60-foot diamond there, but there's a 40-foot drop between where that dumpster is out there in right field and the bottom of that hole, that land. It drops 40 feet right after that dumpster. Connecting to that is the space behind the library, and yeah, that'd be great. We know that the state wants to widen 56 and put a sidewalk from Brunel Drive to the center of town. We also know that that's on hold because that sidewalk runs directly through the parking spots for Marshfield. And we know that they're not going to do that until we have a solution for parking at Marshfield. Anybody who drives through there, that's why we had the police there every single Friday and Saturday night, pretty much stopping and monitoring that, because kids cutting across the road and people backing out, that's the parking there is terrible. But where else do you put it? Because you can't put it out behind, ideally you put it out behind right field, but that means cars are driving right in front of the snack shack all night. And that's a recipe for disaster too. So we've got to find something. There's ways to get into that land from behind the library. We just need to find a way to do it. The thing to keep in mind is, with baseball, every field you build without lights is a minimum of a $75,000 to $100,000 proposition. Because if you're going to do it right, you're going to do it right the first time. You're going to put irrigation in, you're going to put drainage in, you have to do it right. And so it's not we can snap our finger and go build a field tomorrow. It's a multi-year process for us.
So am I hearing Marshfield is a top choice, maybe not a first choice?
I think it's the logical choice. I don't know that it's the top choice.
I think you gotta look at the cost of different sites, what it's gonna take to improve those, what the needs are, and there's a lot of different things to look at.
Yeah. The problem with the cost also comes with public input, right? So, we'll get to soccer in a minute, but we have a stack of letters regarding public input on where soccer would like to go. So it's not even just the money all the time. The money is big, but the cheapest location might not be the location we get to pick, unfortunately. All right, so I kind of heard, we have to fix Marshfield parking, which we knew, as part of the tip. And Gary is way over there, so he's not going to comment on it yet. Maybe if I just point to him long enough, he'll come in. No, he's looking away.
I'll stare.
Yeah. All right, we can always come back, but let's go to soccer.
Absolutely.
Thank you, soccer.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, we are in this position as well of running out of field space as the town grows and as both of our sports become multi-seasonal. So, our board is worked together, and Sean McLaughlin's been a big part of helping us organize our thoughts. And our goal is to, propose a agreement with the town for the use of the field that is about 8 acres next to Glenwood Elementary School. That field is, basically not flat, but there's also no trees there. And of course, we understand that there's been prior uses in that field. And in part of the agreement, we would certainly one of the things that Rutland Youth Soccer would like to do is take care of that land, maintaining it for high-quality soccer fields. So, like John was mentioning, it's important that there's drainage, that there's irrigation, that there's an opportunity to keep the fields in good conditions, so that they don't just become taken over by weeds, which doesn't take long on a soccer field that isn't taken care of. So that's what we have in mind. We have in mind that we would put, as we have need primarily for a full-size soccer field, which currently we utilize Central Trees Field, which is slightly undersized for the official dimensions of a full-size soccer field. And we also are in need of a U12 size field, which is slightly smaller. That's primarily 5th and 6th graders. We currently are utilizing Naquag Elementary Field in between the two diamonds. And we possibly would either make it a third field and or make one of those fields multi-size so that you could do U10 and U12 on it, because we also need more U10 space, partly because we're having a hard time with just further down the hill, the field that's behind Glenwood is often considered not usable, or those coaches who have used it are getting complaints, and we're getting complaints from parents that ticks are coming home with their kids. And we've talked to a couple of folks about how to address that, and that could be part of the solution as well, that we have a better plan for addressing that. All that to say is that having fields at Glenwood, up in that upper place, having that natural connection to the field down below, as well as the community center, which is where we host a lot of our younger programs, would give us a central headquarters, if you will, rather than being spread out throughout the town for all of our different programs. One of the other benefits we see too is that we'd be proposing to add some parking to that space, which would be necessary for us, but also a big help to Glenwood, which has a real parking need, especially during school events. So we think there's some benefits to there as well.
Safety and security.
Yeah, we think it'll be safer for everybody during those events with that extra parking space. And then, as Chris has mentioned, and as John has mentioned, Rutland Youth Soccer will use its status in the community and the relationships that we've built to help solicit volunteer work and funds to get some of these build-outs completed. And ultimately, a lot of us who are coaching and on the board in Rutland Youth Soccer are a part of other youth sport, including baseball in town, and so we want to be able to grow and expand so that they can grow and expand. And I think the feeling is mutual. So that's more or less what I have to say.
I want to get off topic just for 1 second, because I didn't think we'd have Chris Senecal here, and you were pretty much single-handedly behind the Glenwood field. It's very frustrating to have a beautiful flat field and have people say it's unusable. I feel like, man, that seems like a low-hanging fruit that people keep talking about. This seems like we could address this. Do you have any
I don't
thoughts?
know, I mean, I don't know what to do about the ticks, but people, ticks are tough, man.
Yeah.
You spray every day for ticks.
Hey.
I don't know. I can't comment, I take a shower with you.
No,
Yeah, I mean, the field's, it's the right size for it. It's only a U10 field though, which
Right.
is the small size field, so,
Right.
granted, whatever, it's probably the easiest thing to get up and running, but again, it's not solving any major problem that soccer has. It's a step in the right direction. It's certainly gonna help having that field more usable, but they need larger fields.
Yeah, the
Full
primary
size
need is the
and
larger.
Naquag field,
Dick, where's Dick? Dick, you're there. Dick, our boundary over at that Glenwood field, can we mow back a little bit farther than we have been? Or do you think we've kind of hit our limit?
Mow back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the ticks are coming in from the bigger, the higher brush, tree overhang.
There's over 80, it was 102 acres, I think, or something in that
Yeah.
neighborhood of the complete property. And, yeah, there's only, but you're talking down at the,
I'm talking
behind the school.
at the
behind
soccer-
school,
at the
that
soccer
lawn.
field.
It should be opened up.
Past the playgrounds, yeah, but you're cutting trees.
where the drainage goes out to the left.
Yeah, you gotta be
Yeah.
careful.
And
with
some
it,
of
because
it's
you got
wetlands
There's
too.
wetlands there,
Wetlands, you'd have
but-
to clear trees to
I think we'd have
move
to,
it back.
I think we'd have
and
to
you'd
flag
to
it.
fill it.
We'd have
It's
to
not-
flag it.
It's not feasible, really.
She's talking about the ticks, right?
Right. Well, in order to mow it back, you'd have to cut the trees.
Cut the trees.
To move
knock
it back
down,
for the
and
drainage, you'd
get
have
it
to fill it in a little.
Okay.
There are, there's room. There's room.
We're obviously talking about all the need for new fields, but if we
Yes.
can't use our existing fields, we already have a problem. So, there's maps going around, I don't know how far they made it, about the plan that soccer gave out for what they would like to see, and for anybody who is still wondering, it's when you're first entering the Glenwood school property off of Glenwood Road, and you look to your right, you see that big rise, and right now that has been hayed. And so we have comment letters from the Rutland Land Conservancy, we have letters from the Agricultural Commission, from the Planning Board, from the Ware River Nature Club, and we have a copy of the Executive Order 193 from 1981, indicating preservation of agricultural lands to be of a state imperative. So, had a lot of feedback on Glenwood. I know we have a lot of people here from those various boards. I don't think RLC is here tonight, right? No. But does anybody want to make a comment before we proceed with the discussion about possible fields at Glenwood? Is it off the table? I will say the Agricultural Commission letter indicates, and we've been talking about this for a while, Margaret, that they believe the last request for bids to not expire until next spring.
Yeah. I don't have a copy of that contract.
There's no copy of that.
I don't
Does
have it.
anybody?
I don't.
What's the
I'm not-
question?
The
So-
contract for the haying at
The
Glenwood.
25,
Yeah, it expires in 2009.
that's what you,
But I believe Glenwood is not on that list for haying. I don't believe it is, because the last meeting we were at, they said that one wasn't on the list.
so
The
we,
other fields were.
right. Okay, so this is a big question mark for the night. This is like one of those things that prevents us from moving forward a little bit. Our office has not been able to find that document.
No.
It's not.
Does the Agricultural Commission have that document? Does anybody have?
The contract for that field?
Yeah, we don't, we can't, we got nothing.
We don't, but I had the contract personally 20 years ago.
Yeah, but that was 20, it's not, there's nothing current now.
Nothing's changed, and the Ag Commission's actually working on revising that and listing, spelling that property out. The property that's spelled out is the reservoir property to the right of the substation, behind the substation, and then over there, that backs up to the reservoir is the field, and then when the Glenwood School came available, when it was purchased,
2003.
2003, that became part of the agricultural fields in town. And
Well,
never
as-
listed as that.
As far as I know, when I came to the meeting, there's specific fields that are contracted for the haying, and Glenwood is not one of them.
It's all listed as one parcel. Each particular field is not delineated at this time. That's something that the Agricultural Commission is working on for when the bids are solicited in 2019.
The number of acres that is rented by that, if you take the two parcels that I spoke about previously, does not add up to that. You gotta go to the third one at the Glenwood School to add up to that. So, you know, it's a gray area. I'm not here to dispute you.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to get fields for the.
So this is the type. This is the type of discussion this committee, that committee really should have.
I mean, I don't know if the agricultural committee would be against developing fields there over the hay use area. Would that be something that there'd be an issue with if the board approved it? Would the
It's like you're taking your
agricultural?
house away from you. I feed my animals with that. I don't currently farm that. Another farmer does that, but you're taking the livelihood of some farmer away from it.
All right, well, I mean, then I guess we need to look and see if that is in the agreement for the haying.
I can't find the agreement.
Well, that's what I'm saying, there is no agreement for that parcel. That's what they're saying.
Not that we can locate, I have to say,
That
not that we
they
can
can
locate.
So if
So-
there's no agreement,
Well, okay, but it's a little bit irrelevant whether there's a piece of paper. Obviously,
Right.
Marsh, we've had a similar issue that we're trying to iron out. So let's say hypothetically there is some agreement. Either way, it might expire April 9th of 2019. The planning board has recommended that soccer look elsewhere, which they have. And I guess the AgCom is unofficially suggesting look elsewhere, or officially.
I would say
Officially. Requested the town to seek a site which is not currently under agricultural use. So I think my question to both of those boards tonight is, are there locations in town that can be converted over to agricultural use that we currently don't do? So for example, we've never paid Rutland Heights. Why didn't we? Right?
I'm hoping to sell it.
As this gentleman said there, that wasn't on the contract, but I did hay Rutland Heights
You did.
per Gary's request to help keep it open.
But that wasn't official.
No, but that was to help keep it open and keep it from a fire hazard and et cetera, but,
Okay.
as Mr. Williams said, there was a lot of hazards out there that nobody was safe to use. It would have been much safer to use a soccer field out there.
Okay.
There are other properties that the town does own that should be taken a look at. Yes, forests might have to be cut, you know, a lot of bulldozer work, you know, it will happen, stumping, whatever, grind them up, whatever. But there should be. And I keep hearing talk about diamonds and all this. How many acres are you looking for?
Each baseball field requires 1.5 acres. Square-
Marshfield,
in the-
Marshfield in its entirety right now is just under 2 acres, I think.
You need another acre of parking.
Correct. Right.
For Marsh.
And
So you're at 5 acres of those 2 fields.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Peter, if you know, but I always thought there was wetlands behind Marshfield, that's why
Well, that's
nothing.
what, again, we don't know these things.
Yeah.
And so that's what, like, those were just, we just said that those would be the best options to tie it into a single complex. I know what soccer is trying to do. Soccer is trying to build a complex of soccer fields. And I get it, because it builds a community. We'd love for every baseball and softball field in town to be one single unit. Go to, what is it, Hubbardston, and has an incredible complex all together. We'd love to be able to build that community. We can't do that when there's a field at Central Tree and a field at Naquag and 2 at Memorial. Like, it just doesn't work. Marsh is a standalone system. Like, if you look at Marsh Field, I'm sure people have driven by it on Friday and Saturday nights. It is the place to be in town. We'd love to build that for the entire league.
I'm just saying, I feel that there's room there, not only for 1 or 2 additional fields, but also for a senior center in the center of town, so that everything revolves around the center of town and community, and the access to public resources and things like that.
So when we were looking for soccer field usage, we looked at many parcels in town, and there were either, wetlands, there's restrictions, or there's not enough space to develop the fields that are necessary. And Glenwood was the only one that really came up. There was no deed restrictions, there was nothing limiting for field usage. Other parcels are in town, so that's why I brought it to the board.
Yeah,
to
we
try to
also
get
feel,
that
we also feel
parcel.
very strongly that building field space in the school there, in the space near the school, is a benefit to the community as a whole. So while we certainly would, want to schedule Rutland Youth Soccer primarily there as availability is there, that's something that we want to make available to the school to use for its use as well. So, we see that space as important from both having a central location for most of what soccer is doing, as well as being an additional asset for the school and the community.
I think some of the problem here, where we're talking about soccer submitted a plan with a drawing. That may not work because of an agreement from before. Now they're being told, why don't you look at another space? This is our space. The green dots on the map. Do we have a list? Is there a list that they can go to where?
That's where
Not
you
to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I'm curious.
I actually did that. I went
Yeah.
through, we went through the assessor, I spoke with
I'm just-
Margaret,
Yeah.
and we had a list, and that's what we did.
I'm just saying, I
went
feel like
through
you've
that.
wasted your time submitting this, and now there might be a document. Is it easier, where Mr. Senecal brought up, if we had some sort of a group to talk about it, we can get ag involved, we can get the wetlands, the conservation all involved before soccer wastes time to come up with another location to find out it's no good.
Well, that's the reason that I went through all this beforehand.
Yes.
And I went looking at the wetlands, looking
Right.
at deed restrictions. And that's the only parcel that really, one of the only parcels that stands out. And not only that, it's a benefit to the town and the school for a safety perspective. If anyone knows anything about Glenwood, their concerts, their shows, if you have any kids there, I do, you can hardly fit a car down there when they're doing shows. This way, if we are granted the space for soccer, we'll have 2 additional parking spaces. That frees up. If there's an emergency, heaven forbid now, then no emergency vehicles are getting down there. It's tough, because they park on both sides.
Can I ask a devil's advocate question to planning and ag comms, because we have you here and that's why we wanted you all here. And I really appreciate that there's been this upswing of protection interest in the haying and in the agricultural fields. But let's face it, over the past decade, we've given up hundreds of acres to development for housing, including a farm that the town could have owned. I mean, we were this close and we gave it up. And it seems odd to me, and I have to say it straight out, and maybe I'm not objective because I'm just off of the Glenwood train, but I was there for 7 years as a parent. it's hard not to see the benefit of putting playing fields on an existing school property that already has playing fields on it for the sake of, and I apologize, I don't know how many bales. And can we find those bales elsewhere and reclaim some of our forest land to haying? The fact is, when we built Glenwood, most likely the location, it was because we didn't own the heights yet. Otherwise, we would have had a beautiful school complex that continued on one right after the other. We don't, so Glenwood sits off by itself and kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I know that's how it feels sometimes. And all of a sudden it seems like we're really digging in on, we gotta protect this one relatively, compared to what some of you guys do, small haying field.
Then what's next? What's the next field that's gonna go? That's the
I don't know.
problem.
I would just like to make one comment. There is case study, and it's a very common practice in the state of Massachusetts. It's allowed by the DCR. Town of Somerset 3 years ago, town of Sturbridge 3 years ago, and it was either Oxford or Dudley within the last 5 years. You are allowed to, it was for public field space actually in the town of Sturbridge, where they took existing conservation land because of the cost. It was the site, it was the easiest site to develop. They went ahead and developed that for community fields, and then as long as you replace that quantity of acreage with other conservation land, the DCR in Boston had no issues with it, all the courts, no problems. It's a legal practice to do that towns do.
They're talking about it, actually, just so everybody knows, at Leominster State Forest right now. The town of Westminster has petitioned the legislature for an expansion to the big Fitchburg Westminster landfill, 85 acres to come right out of Leominster State Forest, with what Chris is talking about, 175 acres being given in another parcel.
Yeah. It's a common practice towns do. Let's face it, they're not making any more land.
I mean, I'm not saying take food out of people's mouths, but like the farmers that hay that, how many bales of hay do they get out of there? Can they get that out of the heights? Something, is there a way that we can get the amount of bales that are at Glenwood somewhere else, like he was saying, to offset that, so there's no hardship on anyone? That's another thing. I mean, a lot of the land I looked at was wetlands, and you can't build the fields on the wetlands. Around the wetlands, you can,
Well, I can build houses on wetlands in town.
well, I'm not a builder.
So I don't know, I don't expect an official answer, but I don't think I got much of feedback. If we were to do what even Chris just talked about, and I don't think it's called replication, but it's similar to that. If we said, we didn't like to do it, but we're giving up X amount of haying acreage up at the Glenwood property, we need to double that somewhere else, or, I'm gonna throw out double for haying. Do we know of a spot that we can reclaim?
Everybody here comes and picks the rocks out of there.
Well, it's the cost,
Yeah.
These guys, you talked about the low fruit picking.
Yeah.
In turn, if the town is willing to do, the land swap and turn it into a field that looks like that field,
Yep.
you're gonna have costs similar to a baseball field, the $75,000.
Well, and that $75,000 does not include the leveling of the field. Like if we have to do major site work in terms of tearing trees out, we're talking just put a dime in there. No, I know what you're saying. No, I get what you're saying. There's no cost, and we're a non-profit organization. So
the other challenges that you have, and I don't see the town people voting, hey, we'll spend $100,000 on 10 acres of turning into farm fields. That will never happen. You got a better chance of turning a wood lot into a soccer field or a baseball field before you do turning it into an ag field, because who cares about the farmer?
I don't.
And now you got this gentleman sitting right here, and he's talking about solar. And I know he's here to talk about some town parcels and solar. And one big thing that Devereux is talking about is dual use in regards to solar and ag fields being used. And way out on a big limb here. Can he turn a soccer field? Can he put a soccer field or a baseball field under a solar field? And don't let him tell you no, because he probably can. You'll have your own dome, and they don't put the solar fields close together. If you're aware of this at all, they have to have ag fields they put underneath so you can still hay or graze beef animals or turkeys or anything like that. In turn, you can still have daylights going to it. He's just going to have to do more of a clear span to in turn prevent posts from the kids running into. You think I'm crazy, but I'm not.
So, could we give ag kind of homework and ask if there are town-owned parcels based on our beautiful map that are worth a second look at returning, because let's face it, right? A lot of our woodlot these days used to be open field, returning to hay or grazing field that the town owns.
You're welcome to give the Ag Commission homework, but I think the homework has already been done by both sports entities already. If they can't afford to do it cost effectively, the ag fields aren't gonna be able to be put in cost effectively either.
Should make money from woodlot clearing.
Not enough. All depends on the, what's there. It could
Typically-
be all scrub trees.
Typically, if you you need about $1,500 to $2,500 of valued trees to take them out for harvesting to stump it alone, and then you got another $5,000 to $10,000 an acre to turn into a usable field on. You know, if Jordan Farm is clearing property,
Yep.
Jordan Farm expects somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 an acre to come back in and take the stumps out. And then in turn, to turn it into a hayfield is somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 an acre. To turn it from a field that has been stumped into a farmable field, so it looks like a hayfield again.
So did I just hear a total of 10,000 an acre or a total of 15 an acre? To turn
No,
it into a hayfield.
From stumps.
Grand
stumps is
total from wood.
75 stumps to hay.
Stumps to hay.
$12,500.
12.5 an acre.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Have we considered the landfill? I'm trying to.
Ah, that's funny, I was just thinking the same thing.
Because I mean,
No.
the,
That's
So-
DCR.
Yeah, so
can't do
I'll
that.
start this.
That
This is where my process started 5 years ago.
I tried that.
No, this is where the process started 5 years ago. We called Ann Goby and Kim Ferguson with the state, because that is state land. And so we started that process. We walked the space with Kim. And we already, it just wasn't big enough for the location for baseball to do multiple things. Is it big enough for soccer? It's a good question. It just wasn't the right shape and size for us to do something like that.
Soccer generally needs more space than baseball, other than a full.
Yeah, but the shape of that space might be beneficial. I mean, you have to go look at it and
because there's
plot
how
it out.
many acres down there?
It's just the way you'd have the shape of that land. Yeah, there's not an awful lot in terms of, there's only 4 acres there, I think is what it is, and the shape of that land, it wasn't for what we needed. And so we looked at it. That's where, like I said, that's where we started, because we got further with the state on that than we were getting with the town.
How many parcels in Rutland are for agricultural haying? How many
Total parcels?
How many total parcels do you have?
Does the town of Rutland have, or do I have?
That the town of Rutland allows the agricultural committee to hay? Or, there's 3, there's Glenwood,
And the 2 on Central Tree.
and those leases are up at next year?
Yeah.
There's total 25 acres approximately, plus or minus, of those 3 parcels. The field beside the substation on Central Tree, you know where the substation is? Directly behind there is a hayfield. Half of it is owned by Ramey Erickson, half of it is owned by the town of Rutland. If you drove down Ramey Erickson's driveway and there's a house behind it, there's a left field there that if you can see from Muscatog as you look over, that's the other parcel. And then you have the 2 parcels on both sides of the driveway of the Glenwood School.
Okay.
But once again, through the chair, whatever happened to the Rutland Heights? The Conservation Commission owns the property up there, and you wanted to put a soccer field up there, what killed it?
The Rutland Heights, as Jonathan
Not
knows.
excuse me, not Rutland Heights, Rutland Sanatorium, the first TB hospital in the United States.
Up off of,
Central Tree.
from Century up in Hickory, up off of there.
Skyline Drive.
I had a site plan approved for 4 soccer fields up there. It was within the 9 acres, not the drop-off land, Dick, but that where that old road is there.
Yeah.
It butts all the houses up on, the name of the street there.
Skyline Drive.
Skyline Drive, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Alright, so I had 4 soccer fields terraced in there. Had all the site plan, gone through everything with conservation. They had signed off on everything. And when the abutters up there caught wind of what I had been working on, they went to the select board and they blew it up, said no way. Because the abutters complained about that. I went to a meeting at one of the abutters' house and, holy smokes, I almost got I had to run for my life. Tried to calm them down, but they, no, boy, they wouldn't have nothing to do with it.
So
They
I
want
thought-
the traffic going up Skyline Drive is what it was.
I thought it was an official ruling saying that that site was for passive recreation only, and we couldn't put a playing field in there.
They made that argument, but again, there's plenty of case precedent that I had presented, you know, with my proposal that passive recreation is soccer, you just can't put permanent structures on it. So we couldn't build a snack shack like that's at, you know,
Yeah.
Marshfield, and permanent bathrooms, you'd have to do portable things, remove them. I think there was like a 90-day window that you could leave things there, so, you know, porta johns would have to be picked up in the spring and dead of summer or something like that, but it's been a while since I was with that passive recreation, but that's what it was.
Was there any?
And then again, excuse me, you could still reallocate land in town, just like I was saying, Sheila, before, for passive recreation as well, you can do that.
Do the swap.
Yeah.
Can you do swap with state property in the state forest or the state, the prison camps down there?
I mean, the state's doing it in Leominster, and it's getting an enormous amount of
terms
not
of a
all
lot of-
positive attention, but there's a huge need up there, I guess, to expand the landfill. That's what it's fast tracking through the legislature. It's flying.
But in turn, we have a huge need of sports here. You have hay fields down there, in there, that I used to farm, down there at a state property within the state prison camp system. That's already open, that's relatively flat, that probably you wouldn't get any pushback from us as an ag commission because they're not town-owned.
Yeah, but
They're
it's
not-
a state.
But in turn, you can do a swap. Do we have other property that's unusable, that's not doing, and there's multiple, there's over 50 acres down there that are open. That's open hayfield, poor condition.
Are you talking off Charnock, entering that way?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay.
This is a round table discussion.
Absolutely.
I'm not round very good.
You're
but I
not.
try.
You're there. You're at the round part of the room. You're there. Could we? All right. So it's 8:40.
Wow.
Margaret's last meeting. We had to make it a big one.
Getting overtime.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
I want to hear progress.
Yeah. Could we get a plan of action? I mean, the board. You know, if Glenwood, from the board's perspective, having gotten the feedback we got, you all got that packet, is off the table. Are we prepared to say that to soccer tonight? Because they need to start from scratch at that point. Or do we need to do more talking about it?
I think the idea of putting together a committee, a town property review committee, whether it's for recreation only or whether it's for all town needs, I think is imperative. You have to be able to start and allow the committee to do its due diligence.
So Abby, that will be on our next agenda. Town property, we're gonna figure out the name for it.
I like your Parks and Recs idea.
The board was
yeah,
actually
Parks
going
and
to be
Rec.
looking at a proposal for
Yeah,
a
because
town
to be
properties
non-sponsored.
review committee tonight.
We were. It's very late. So
You were.
Parks and Rec. What, having heard everything you've heard from baseball, where should baseball go? They know where they wanna go.
Be nice.
I know between Central Tree and the Heights, there is a small parcel there, and I know there was a science teacher that really wanted to save it, but it's flat.
That was,
That's pretty doggone decent. But there again, has anybody taken another harder look behind Central Tree, down lower? It might have, fields might be lower in elevations and things like that, or different levels, but.
So that particular parcel was one that we had a recreation roundtable a few years ago, and we talked about that parcel in combination with a sliver of the Heights parcel. But the back part of that parcel actually is wetland, so I guess you'd have to look.
Way down.
Yeah.
But it's
So I
far
guess you'd have to
enough
look to
away
see
that I
what's
think you could
available.
stay away from it.
Yeah. So there is the front part of that, and Sean, you were looking at that piece too, weren't you?
Yes, and those wetlands when we looked at that.
In the back.
Right.
Gary's not here. Do we have good topographical maps of the town parcels?
Well, I don't know that we do, but state GIS has them, and we can actually pull some of that information right from the assessor's GIS system. So we can get some topography from that.
One thing I would think would be a good recommendation is to take some of these parcels that we're all talking about, and sit down with the groups and say, okay, this one's eliminated. this one's no good, this one's no good, this is a possibility, instead of just throwing them all out there.
Yeah.
Try to eliminate the
Process
ones.
of elimination.
Eliminate the ones that aren't feasible. Start with that.
Through the chair, make sure RDIC, because any town parcels has to go through RDIC when they've changed hands, in case you didn't know it.
I think RDIC knows it.
Yes, we do.
I'm sure they know it.
Okay. Between baseball and soccer, I think one of the things that we, again, I want to make sure everybody has sort of some projects to do. The board has a lot to do. I just quickly, Karina had to leave. She's going to do a recreation wish list because we can't focus just on playing fields for team sports, and make sure we work that into our space. There is a bit of a snowball effect where if we get a senior center in another location, it opens up that building and that property to something sort of more along the lines of what soccer is talking about, a complex like we see in other communities. That's obviously long-term view, but how it affects baseball is it allows soccer to sort of take a hands-off approach to what now are shared fields, so it gets back to what they're talking about with practice space, things like that, where they don't have to compete for sports that have now become 2 seasons, sometimes 3. I know you all do some summer stuff too. So I guess the question is, soccer, clearly this is not a slam dunk. I don't mean to switch sports, but where would you go from there if you couldn't have that? We're not saying you can't, but if you couldn't.
My ideal is to be there and switch to hayfields.
You want to look at
So I think if you're saying to look at other space, right? Anytime we can find a combination that puts most of our activities together,
Centrally.
that would be fine.
Okay.
But it also can't be so expensive that it's impossible for us to ever accomplish. So that's a problem for an organization that literally just raises money so we can pay for uniforms. I mean, that's what our primary job is.
If you were in an ideal situation, when would you start these fields?
When,
Last year.
2 years ago. Our problem is acute. So we would start as soon as we can, because we've been talking about this for years, and like others have expressed, continuing to talk about it and not finding a solution or not having an actionable solution is the problem. So, 3 years ago.
Right. The reality is that everybody around this room who's here for baseball or soccer or softball, we're all under the realization now that we're shooting to build fields, not even for our own kids anymore.
Right.
That we're here to make it so that the next wave of kids coming up have the facilities they need. I'm under no illusion that my 10-year-old is going to play on any new baseball field that's built. It's not going to happen because the way things move, which is why we started this when he was 5 and playing t-ball. Because it's just the reality. I mean, if we know the way things work. It's been going on for 12 years in town. So, ideally we did this 12 years ago. We want to start now.
What about the poor bobolink bird? Did you even?
I know. I didn't read the letter about the bobolink.
What is a bobolink?
It's a little brown and white bird that nests in tall grasses.
Are they edible?
How come that's not a problem for haying then?
It is.
So we got a letter from them.
Yeah.
too.
So across
I'm
the
just curious.
state, they ask farmers to not hay their fields until after the 4th of July. That's when the birds fledge. It's a little bit like the haying problem that you see on Cape Cod with the piping plover, where they don't allow people on certain areas of the beaches until the plovers are done with their fledging, and it's just like that. And essentially the group that wrote a letter to us saw bobolinks in that area on Glenwood, and I would agree. I think the Glenwood property is very wildlife generous.
It's not overcommon in state bid property, even in Holden, or we had some in the prison camps, they asked you to after July 15th. And most progressive farmers don't like doing that.
Right, I understand that, but
Yeah.
that's not in the contract for whoever's mowing at Glenwood now.
That's correct.
Okay. So we're only gonna worry about it if we do new things there.
I have another request for the AgCom. You're not going to come to any more meetings. the Glenwood tick problem. I know you see there's a company in Lunenburg that's doing they're sending goats out, and I think there's another one sending out chickens. Can we try that?
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Not a problem.
Not a problem.
Let's
Just,
kick soccer balls through
Rent them
that.
out.
Like,
How do you keep them
come
on the
let's
field?
be-
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not a joke, I actually.
I understand, but
Just
What,
put
they
the
bring
pedestal
animals out,
mounted
let 'em
solar
feed
above
underneath?
them.
Yeah.
Now,
They
those
use
you
it
can
for
have
land
dual
clearing.
purpose.
Those you can eat.
The chickens eat the ticks. I know this sounds like a joke to Jonathan, but it's true. The
No,
chickens
I-
eat the ticks.
It's not a joke, but
The,
they're obviously
Cleans up the
leaving.
mess.
Right, who's cleaning up the mess after them? And now you're kicking a soccer ball with 6 to
Oh,
10-year-olds through it.
They're not on the soccer
Goats
field. They're
attack
on
you.
the perimeter, clearing the perimeter. The ticks are, okay.
You're-
I'm off topic.
It's a lot of work
Goat
to make.
yoga. Have goat yoga.
I'm telling it's getting late. All right, baseball. So baseball, we had a little bit of news for you, and I don't think you got it yet, but the fire chief had, it's not in our packet tonight, is it?
No, he sent it today and I
Okay.
did not print it in time.
Okay, so the fire chief has an official letter for you indicating that you can light Memorial Field, and he has a map attached,
Okay, so,
okay?
okay.
Can
I know that
So-
was a question for a very long time,
Well,
and
so
we
I'm
can
gonna,
announce
so I'll
tonight
address
that
this too.
it's...
So in 2006, we attempted to light, the baseball program attempted to light Memorial Field. There was 3 selectmen at the time, 2 voted yes, 1 voted no. The police chief said yes, the DPW chief said yes, the fire chief said no, and used life flight as the reason. What we do know is that in 2006, the president of Rutland Baseball called UMass and asked about life flight, and life flight's response was, "You're going to light the field for us? That's great. Those poles aren't going to get in the way." So we shot it down 12 years ago. Those lights have actually been sitting behind the DPW building for 12 years, waiting to be installed. God only knows what mice have done to it by now. But that's over $100,000 in lights that are sitting back there. They've been moved multiple times from what we understand. We don't know what condition they're in. And so that kills me that we argue every year about lighting a softball field and providing resources in town. We had a donation of $100,000. We have the equipment on site, and it's been set to do nothing because of erroneous information. And so we're going to look at those lights, and we're going to see what they're capable of doing. But it's frustrating because obviously we had momentum. We had the
Just
resources.
gave you the green light
12
now.
years ago.
Yeah, we gotta
Well,
move,
just
we
wait
gotta
if
move
you don't
forward.
want it.
But if those lights are destroyed, that does us no good.
Ballast boxes have severe damage in them.
The bells, but wouldn't you have to upgrade those anyway, Chris, at this point? The
No.
LEDs are so much better.
No, metal halide is still an option.
Oh.
On sports fields, we're just doing the St. John's Field.
Okay.
We went with LED there, but the cost savings in LED, metal halide is still being used.
What does it cost to replace a ballast box like that and a light that size?
It's the majority of the cost.
Like,
Those 4 boxes, I mean, all the equipment in there and repairing, just the ballast boxes alone, it's probably 20,000 at least. And then the poles, the heads have, basically all the heads have shields on them, deflector shields, reflectors and deflectors on them. And a lot of them are bent, and I'm not sure if they're reusable or you just have to get new ones for them.
you've seen them lately?
Yes. Most of the heads are in okay condition, most of the lamps in them look all right, but you're not gonna know that until you're gonna have to test them out before you hang them, 80 feet in the air.
Yeah, yeah.
Rain. You wanna make sure they're all in operating.
Did you say 20,000 a light?
20, just for the ballast boxes, for the 4 ballast boxes, it's gonna be at least
Any of us
$20,000 to
know
$30,000 to
yeah?
repair that. All
It's the
those.
first time I've heard of it.
Is there a plan to move them out? This sounds like your homework, right? Is there a
No,
plan
not.
to get them, where are they?
Well, you
And
gotta,
the
you
DPW
gotta
went
clear
behind
some
the
space
DPW.
in that DPW yard to make room for more fields. So, get the light poles out of there.
Okay, let me ask you
Musco,
this.
they're the best lighting,
I-
I mean, it's the best, it's a shame.
If
They are.
the lights are salvageable, is there a plan to put them up? Will you
Yeah,
put them up?
It depends on the cost. I mean, there's a huge cost associated.
No, I
with it.
understand. If they're salvageable, the lights that we've
Yeah,
got,
we'd like to use them.
you're gonna put them up?
Yeah.
Okay, and I just forwarded you the email and we'll release it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, those lights were donated to the league. The town has been storing them so yeah, we'd want to use them.
Okay.
So you have to go ahead.
What do you need?
From the town?
What do you need from us to get them out and get them inspected and get them repaired?
We need to have a conversation as a board to see.
We need to, I mean, we just found out that these exist.
Okay, us too.
So do
Yeah,
we.
no, I know, I'm not blaming anybody, we just found out they exist. And we don't know exactly what the repairs are gonna be.
Okay.
And I don't believe we have poles to set them on.
Correct.
It's just lights, so we have to try,
In ballast boxes.
we have to try to find poles. And
You have to
then,
get them through Musco.
right, and then from that point, we're gonna have to have some sort of layout system done. I mean, this isn't like a, great, next spring, we've got lights.
I think, I know it's a project. I think where I was headed was, have you
Right.
kind of given up and said, forget it, no matter.
I mean, I'm excited we have the green light.
Okay,
That's definitely a step in the right direction,
okay,
but it's just one step.
yep,
And the first thing, to put something like this in action, you have to determine the field that you wanna light, which field we're gonna do in town. And then we get Musco involved to do the site plan of that, and they locate where those poles will go on that parcel.
okay,
They give you, and then I would work with them to determine what components we would need to repair. The poles are missing, so you have to get the concrete. It's a 2-foot concrete base that goes in the ground, 18 feet, and then there's 3 sections of steel pole that stack on each other to go up to 80 feet high. And then you set the head rig on the top with like a 5-foot piece of steel sets up on top. But all of this, every head is engineered to a particular degree, laterally, horizontally, and every angle. And all this is done by Musco, and that's what you have to have them do.
how many poles worth of lights are there?
I'm not sure, believe there's at least 4.
4. Okay, and the map that the fire chief has given you specifically says you can light the 2 sidelines at the, coming out of the home plate closest to the buildings. So not the far end, not where the driveway curves around, the closer,
Softball field.
the softball field.
Closest to the pool.
Yeah, we wouldn't be looking for the baseball field anyway, we want the softball field lit.
Okay.
So you wanna do that softball field at Memorial, is that what you're
Well,
saying?
no, I'm not saying that this place, because it may be that Central Tree Middle School is the place to light the field and not do Central Tree. Well, again, we literally found out the lights actually existed. We went and had Musco quote the lights, it was a $250,000 project. It's not small for
No.
brand new lights, and, you know, we looked at $250,000 and said, we're not sitting on a pile of cash.
How did
And
you
so-
find out the lights existed?
What's
Just
that?
curious, how did you find out that the
I
lights?
got a call from a guy who's been in town a long time and been affiliated with the league, and he said,
You
know,
got
I
a
just
guy?
want you
You got a guy?
I got a guy. He said that they existed. Yeah, I prefer not to name names, but I got a
That's
guy.
fine.
So,
Wow.
Wow.
yeah, so we found out they existed, and then that's where I sent the email to you guys asking about it.
So can you keep us in the loop on the condition of the lights and where you think you're headed timeline-wise and all that? You have an
Again,
okay
to
from
determine the
Central.
condition of the lights, you have to determine which
Yeah.
field you're gonna do, so
Well-
Musco can create the engineered drawing, so we know what work we have to do to the lights.
I think in a lot of ways it makes more sense to do Central Tree, which
agree.
one we'd be going to the school committee, because
All the kids can play there.
right.
School kids.
And and I can say this much, electrically, if I was gonna, just from an engineering design, it's a lot cheaper to do Central Tree Field, because the primary power is right there on that field. The transformer for Central Tree Middle School is right along just outside the first baseline fence. It's right there. There's a primary pole right there in the back corner. We can tap power off of that, bring a separate service right 15 feet. Electrically, excavation-wise, it's the cheapest way, this is the cheapest field to do.
So let me just ask, again, devil's advocate, Marsh Field, marquee field, beautiful, draws people who don't even have kids playing baseball. You have an opportunity to make a similar level field for softball, also in the center of town, beautiful, right, the views, the whole 9 yards, and you finally have approval for it, but you think you'd rather do the middle school property?
Central Tree has more flexibility to create the marsh-like atmosphere in terms of building an announcer's booth, a scoreboard out there. There's more flexibility, there's more parking at Central Tree than there is at Memorial. I mean, you've seen it as you drive up there
all
for
four
any.
levels of softball can use CT. All 4 levels cannot use Memorial.
As it is right now.
Yeah, but, well, yeah, I mean, unless you get rid of the baseball field that's on the other side. It's kind of like the same thing down, you got at Naquag. The big field gets used, so you lose that little field back there. So if we use Memorial for the older girls, you can't have the boys out there playing baseball up at Memorial. But yet down at CT, where it sits alone,
Okay.
every level of girl can use that field.
So, Margaret, I actually don't know the answer to this. So we own the property. Obviously, the school leases it from us. The principal is fine with you putting lights. He was thrilled at the idea. because we were talking about other things, but.
Yeah, I had a conversation with him last September. He was.
Yeah, he's thrilled.
ecstatic.
But,
Huh?
is that a school committee vote?
Oh, no, I talked to.
No, not
one
the lights
of
on the field.
No.
No.
What permission do we give them?
The town.
Yeah, it's our
I think it's I think it would go to the board. It's not like you're leasing anything further. This is already your.
I know it probably sounds bad,
Unless-
but that was '06 when the proposal
No,
went out from
You're not looking to
Memorial.
do exclusive
Again, this meeting
use
was to
there
make sure
because the
everybody
school
was
uses it,
able
right?
to
So-
move
No,
forward.
we might move to.
Right.
you know,
We're, I
think
mean, we're
about
looking at what
happen, but
services
our ability to
softball best
maintain
now.
the field increases significantly with the lease.
Okay.
Open lease, they can use it for whatever they want, but allow us to maintain that field is what I'd essentially be looking to do. I'd love to be able to do, because it gives us
So
more
they-
flexibility to maintain the field.
So it sounds like there'd be some agreement, but it wouldn't be an exclusive use agreement.
Right.
Because obviously it needs to stay.
The school's gonna want, yeah.
No, yeah, and we would never take
So-
that away. We would never be looking to do that.
Okay, so again, to get sort of, I wanna make sure we all have stuff to do when we leave here. I don't wanna leave a meeting like Jonathan talks about leaving a meeting with nothing happening. So, you guys are gonna check on the light condition and what they need and whether they're usable. If they're usable, you're headed towards, and you're going to use Central Tree as your source for the vendor, yes? Your
Yes.
location for the vendor?
Yes.
So what we will then do from our end, when we hear from you, is obviously put this on a board discussion with indication to notify the district that those lights are gonna get installed. And I'm not saying it's gonna happen this week, this month, whatever, but to notify them that it's happening. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay,
And then,
Ultimately, though, financial will have the final say.
yes. So
Just
we'll
with
hear
that
from the
caveat.
board, we'll hear from the
When we know
baseball
what the cost
softball.
of these lights and the installation's gonna
Right.
be,
Okay,
right.
dictates the timeline.
okay.
And then soccer just needs to know whether or not we can still use that field in the fall, or if there's another plan for additional fields that we would have access to.
The
Also
Central
with-
Tree softball field, because you're using it for soccer.
We
in the
have
fall.
rights to it in the
Okay.
fall for U10 soccer.
Okay,
And now,
Another-
and like we've talked before, there are grants available for us to do some of these things. The one
it
that
takes
concerns me
away.
is the biggest one is Major League Baseball has a grant to put lights on fields. It's about $50,000 that they'll give youth sports programs, but it is exclusive rights, and Jason and I have talked about this, that we would never, our plan is to apply for the grant. We would never move forward with anything and sign the contract to take the money until we had a conversation with soccer. So there were never, we're gonna apply if we get, it makes no sense to try to make a contingency plan until Major League Baseball says, yeah, here's $50,000, and then we can talk about
okay.
what the reality is.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to move to another location
Right.
in that situation.
Is there any reason that a light installation would cause soccer to not be able to use that field in the fall?
No,
No.
our plan would
Okay.
never
No.
be, we would never put it in the playing field. In soccer, on that field, the U10 field is smaller than the outfield
Okay.
at Central Tree, that we
Won't be a
wouldn't have an issue.
problem.
Okay.
But only if you get the grant that says it has to be exclusively for.
Right, if
Then
we don't get that
soccer
grant,
would
then
be able
soccer,
to
for all
use
that
that.
matters to me, soccer can turn on the lights and play a little bit longer. I mean, the primary goal would not to be to light the soccer field, so I can't guarantee the lighting quality. But why wouldn't they do it?
There are,
Absolutely.
I mean, if you, just so you know, there are many installations, many fields we do where the outfield is a soccer field, full-size soccer field, and it's a baseball field, and the lights, you just add another 2 to 4 additional poles,
Right.
and you can use it either way.
Right. So
Can I-
obviously more costly.
But if they get,
But it's more money,
if
correct.
baseball get,
Double
like
money.
he was saying, I think on your question, if they get the grant for the lights, soccer would not be able to use that field.
Right.
'Cause
And
it's
we'd
gotta
have
be
to see
for
for length
baseball
of time,
or
like these
softball.
grants typically say you can't use it for any other sport for 2 years or 4 years or whatever that looks like. We'd have to look at what the,
So going
Sounds
back, for soccer,
Take the money.
what is the board's perspective on the soccer fields? Getting back to that.
On Glenwood?
Yes, or any, I mean, soccer needs fields. We don't have, like baseball has exclusive field at Marsh. Soccer has nothing.
Right.
We have nothing
Before,
in
hold
the
on.
town. And when I was doing, scheduling for practices, I was having 2, 3 people on a field at a time, different teams. And it was crazy.
Before we move to soccer, we're gonna end with you. Can we have baseball, softball given one more task? Or it's not really a task, it's more of a plan. I think that the Marsh Field people need to meet with Gary, with maybe you as CMRPC, because we have that big Palmagussit project on the tip, and right now our year is 2020?
I think so.
2020?
2020.
I think it's 2020 to start, which is actually coming up faster than we think, and I think we're gonna wanna be prepared for that. I know what you're talking about, the guys that showed up who were doing the surveying, who were like, we don't know. So we need to iron that out and make sure that CMRPC is aware on our tip packet that we know what the heck we're doing. Because the only thing that ever holds up a tip on all these communities is that they're not ready. And if we're ready and 100%, we can leapfrog over communities that still have things going on, right? You know better than anybody. So if we can do that, and we'll reach out to you, to whoever needs to come from baseball, softball, relative specifically to Marshfield, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
I think while we're talking about Marshfield, I think we need to know what's happening to the lease. I'm gonna throw the.
Where's the lease?
I'm gonna throw it right out there. Where's,
It's still with legal.
Lease is.
Yeah. And then there, all these discussions came up. So.
I don't understand what's holding up legal. I mean, it's.
No, it's not legal. That's holding it up. It's the conversations about the use of the field. I think that's probably the more recent issue. But you've made it clear that it has to be baseball, right?
It cannot be a softball
Yeah.
field. The softball requires 225 feet from home plate. That left field wall has 1.5 feet behind it before you hit the retaining wall. And if Gary wants to come in, but you can't go further in left field. The field is the field. There's a 1.5 foot we can go further. We can get to 201 feet, not 225, not even close. So, Marshfield
What's the
is a softball.
225?
What's that?
Softball needs 225?
USA softball says for a fence to be there, it needs to be 225. And so, to
What
sit
age
there and talk, what's that? Well, for
every
the ones that
league?
would use the lights, yeah. So for the ones that we're talking about using the lights, the seniors, has to be 225 feet. So the whole point of using it would be so that the softball program can go into the lights, and they cannot do it, there's not enough space.
Well, that's
Well,
a,
instructional.
What's that?
Instructional softball?
There's enough reasons not to do it. There is enough lawsuits in town. You can't, or in the state, you cannot.
When you talk to the softball organization, they say, do not do it. Do not play softball on a fenced baseball field. There's a case in Lowell, Massachusetts, where a girl ran into a fence, broke her arm and I believe a rib, and is suing everybody, including
There's
some of
actually
the town.
3 cases currently in Massachusetts. I
3.
spoke to the president of USAA softball about a year ago, and there's no way he wants an ASA softball team on a baseball field.
so you're not even interested in playing Marsh?
No.
As a representative of
No.
girls softball?
No, what we want
Still
is
be
to give the girls the same experience that Marsh offers baseball, but on a softball field. All right, between the fence distance, the raised mound, okay, and actually, one of the lawsuits going on right now was an infield player ran in for a pop-up, and because they're used to a skin field with no raised mound, she broke her ankle when she hit the mound, because she was looking up, and now again, they're suing everyone. When they sue, they sue the
Go
town,
ahead.
they sue the league, they sue the coach,
Well, we
they
shut
sue
the whole
this.
program down, have no one get hurt, Everybody sues.
Yeah, but
why we can't
there's
have
only
nice
some,
things.
but if the organization that charters you says do not do it, it is not our job to say, you know what, forget you, we're just gonna go ahead and let the girls play softball there, because we feel we want to. At some point, you've got to look to the organizations that oversee you and say, if you're being told not to do it, at what point do you say, you know what, forget it, I'm gonna put my own personal house on the line and my personal savings on the line, because those people they're not suing the town and the league. They're suing board members individually, coaches individually, umpires individually, and none of us are putting our houses on the line to change Marshfield into a softball field when it's not the right size, not the right dimensions. There's a million reasons not to do it. We need to be focusing as a town to give softball the same experience as Marshfield, not trying to take away from Marshfield to give people things. Marshfield was built over 46 years. Marshfield has been there for 46 years. It didn't happen overnight. It was literally the town dump. And so I think we're going the wrong way to say we need to find a way to make that a softball field for one day a year. It's just not the right situation.
If Central Tree was now lit up.
Get the lights up there. It's the proactive thing to do.
Yeah.
Let's better the town.
So
Let's
that's
give those kids, to destroy something. I mean, that is the Michelangelo of Central Mass. I can't tell you how many coaches and kids that don't even know what Rutland is playing that field and say, this is unbelievable.
Right.
I mean, other than playing friendly,
So
this
it's
is the best field around.
So it's completely understandable
You don't
why
wanna touch
some
that.
girls would like to have that same experience
Exactly. They, you know,
just
they-
once. But you're saying now, as a representative of girls softball, that you're not interested in that opportunity if it were to be existing.
Not at all.
Not at all.
We're interested,
Duplicated somewhere else.
duplicating that same experience. And part of the board for the last year and a half, what we've been talking about, is putting a snack shack down at the CT field, putting a full scoreboard down at the CT field, and doing lights, okay? And now that we've got this okay from the fire department, I mean, that's the ultimate goal is, yeah, we want that experience for the girls.
Can I
Without
ask
a
you-
doubt. Matter of fact, we send our senior girls and our junior girls, part of the WSA league that we play under, Clinton has a field with lights. So we make sure they all have games on that field too. So
Now, who is the Memorial Field leased to anybody?
No.
No.
But you can still play, right? You're still allowed to play a game on Memorial Field, right?
yeah, softball?
They do.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't care.
Well, no, we
Scribble. I don't. Whatever you want to
two
do.
levels of the girls softball play on the Memorial Field.
So, what's the advantage to the town to engage in a lease of Marsh Field?
Because
Well, we own
maintain
it.
But look at Marsh Field. The town's not gonna pay to turn the water on and irrigate that field. We assume that cost. The town's not gonna maintain the structures, the town's not gonna do any of those things. Look at the quality of Marsh Field versus look at the quality of Memorial Field. And there's nothing, there's irrigation there, there's people who know that we have the flexibility to go and make that field what it is. A Memorial Field that is maintained by the town, it is mowed by the town, it is maintained, everything is done by the town, there's a big difference. You get people, you get guys out there who want to volunteer, want to spend their Saturday mornings picking weeds along the warning track and mowing that field. It's somewhat of.
But Jonathan, you're not gonna have a lease at Central Tree. That property's already leased to the school. You're
Right.
not gonna have a lease off of a lease. Just keep that in
Right.
mind.
No, I know.
Okay.
That field that does not take the wear and tear that the public Memorial Field. It's in the center of town. Nobody goes down behind Central Tree to play on those fields. When you drive there on the weekend, there's nobody there. It does not take the wear and tear that a centrally located field takes.
All right. We're gonna put the Marshfield lease on the next agenda. Lucky.
The RFP is ready to go.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you actually, I gave you excerpts from
Yeah.
that RFP. It can still be issued in general form for the uses that are already
Yep.
at Marsh Field. And then when the proposals come in, the proposal will come in
Right.
from
Right.
whatever organization.
Okay. So we're gonna put it on our next agenda. Talk about it. Release it. I without starting anything else, I will just say, and I've heard every word you said. One part I think I heard correctly was that the little girls don't have the same requirements of distance that the big girls do. So technically the little girls, in the absence of a similar to Marsh softball field, right, that temporary, hopefully temporary space until, whatever you're gonna do is done, could visit Marsh. Might be something to talk about, because the selling point, I think a few of you have said it, the selling point of being able to play under the lights is what's getting you your players. It's what's pulling them in. And so if we can't offer that to them yet in the right place, can we offer to them temporarily in the wrong place without breaking
And
any
again-
laws? Jonathan's already got, I know.
We'd have to eliminate the
I know.
mound. So you're talking about.
Take the
Well,
mound out.
Yeah, take
even
mound
for
out.
the little ones.
For everybody.
The little ones is 6, 7, and 8 year olds, okay, and it's just a step above T-ball, okay, and it's actually coach pitch, all right, and if a batter doesn't swing after so many pitches, we throw a tee out there and the girl can still hit it.
Do you have to take out the mound for that?
Okay, we would not have to take out the mound for that.
So maybe
But
that's we can finish this for now, have an internal discussion about it. Again, just until you have what you actually
So keep in
want
mind,
for
the
softball.
girls get a game out in Clinton, like Eric said, under the lights. It's
Just
not like
not-
they've been deprived, like they've never had it. They do.
Okay.
Right. And the 6, 7, and 8-year-olds are not playing.
Isn't that
under the
home?
lights.
Our 6, 7, and 8-year-old baseball
Give 'em
players
a-
don't play under the lights.
Right.
I thought they all get a shot in the
Nope.
No, they all get a shot on Marsh Field.
Marsh
10,
Field.
right.
Our 6, 7, and 8-year-olds don't play under the lights.
Okay.
I was gonna say, the play under the lights, they're all gonna be sleeping.
Right. I know. I don't
Before
want.
the lights
I don't
come
want
on.
my
These are
6-year-old
kindergarten.
out at 9 o'clock at night playing under the
These
lights.
are kindergarten girls.
Soccer's rounding this out, but I don't know that you've got a plan to move forward with yet at all.
Well, I mean,
We're gonna get some, chickens and stuff out at Glenwood. That's as far as we got. Like,
no, no, we would like, we'd like action on the
On Glenwood.
on the Glenwood. We'd like permission to move forward on getting an estimate on building flat spaces that would eventually host the fields. Understanding the best way to do that would determine exactly how many fields and what size fields we would end up with in that space.
Do you know the parcel that Chris is talking about up off Central Tree Road? It's
I've never,
really
I
high
know
up.
where you're talking about, but we've talked about it before, but I don't know it as well as I know the Glenwood space.
Okay, do you mind going to take a look at it, just to say, or, yeah, maybe we need to take a second look?
But, I mean, are we gonna be able to overcome the objection of the passive
There's no
space? that we
parking,
talked
the
about?
neighbors.
The neighbors
their
was
butters,
the major
that's-
problem.
That's the problem.
They came and had
Yeah.
a witch hunt there at the select board.
You know, we have these discussions all the time. There are projects that you put forth, and people have concerns, and they're valid concerns, and you see if you can fix them, and you see if you can tweak a project, and you work, you try to move it forward until you say, all right, we're done here. So I don't, the last time, I had an impression that it was absolutely not passive recreation. Maybe it's not, just if we could just take one final look, kind of like the lights, was the answer different today than it was 8 years ago? I don't know.
So let me just throw something for soccer.
Same
So
thing
for
us,
years we.
the definition is stupid.
What if you had a dirt?
Well, no, that's,
around it?
a question I have to Chris is, he spoke with the abutters, and he was working on that parcel. Do you feel that there's a chance for soccer to move forward on that parcel?
You'd have to ask the abutters that question.
Can I ask, has soccer looked at the
Legally,
top of the
there's
hill
no
at
issue
the
there.
heights?
You'll get through there
Only
legally.
with Ken and you guys.
Right.
The abutters
But if
that
we're-
hired a lawyer
If we're saying that's not proper.
and came to the select board meeting and shot it down.
So, yeah, they're getting legal involved, so,
They hired a lawyer.
I don't remember that.
Talking about Central Tree
yeah.
property?
Yeah.
Do you remember this guy?
Can you get around it and come in from a different
remember.
location?
So that's,
It's up to the select board.
And the select boards, put the squash on it at that time.
because the
I-
lawyer
And I
raised the
wasn't gonna
question.
stop World War III, whatever.
No, ironically, there used to be a ball field on Skyline. If you go way back, when it was the sanatorium, there was a baseball field there.
So when you come in on that circle road, all that land on the left, buddy, we had a nice buffer zone, had all the civil
No, but
plans
the
done.
problem is leveling.
I bet what is still
It's
back
gonna
there.
be
I didn't know if there was an.
Had full plans, it was good. Don't feed up, right?
I don't know.
It's a good
When
piece
they
of
shot
property.
that,
You
when
set
they
me
shot
up on
that
that.
down
That's fine.
then, so
You put me on
I
that.
can't see it getting anywhere now.
Okay. So, if soccer can just take a look.
So
Just take a look.
You want alternatives.
Just in case. I want in case alternatives for you. I don't want you stuck here and then all of a sudden in 3 weeks somebody says we just can't and
Right.
you're nowhere. So look at Skyline, look at the top of the heights adjacent to Central Tree. The board will then, add to our agenda the Glenwood proposal.
Yes.
Um,
I think if you look at the scheme of things, that if you were to place a soccer field, it is more likely that it would fit next to that school. And I also like to say it was nice that you're offering to allow the school right now. So thank you for that change of position. I appreciate that. However, I also have to respect that the loss of 8 acres of hayfields, if that could be replicated somewhere,
Right.
either at the prison camps or whatnot, but I would think realistically it should be a soccer field with school access in there.
Is that an area up near Skyline, one of the fields that's hay? It is, okay.
Just beyond it, yeah.
Well,
Already
we
is.
have replication issues for
But the
hayfields,
parcel
I
we're
think no
talking
matter
about,
what.
Margaret, is not.
It's
all
not.
a wooded lot area.
Oh.
So where I had planned soccer fields, it was just a wooded scrub brush area.
Okay.
I have a question. I had heard under rumblings that there is a parcel off of behind Forest Drive going up to Central Tree that could also potentially work for soccer. Is that not town property? Is that not?
Forest Hill,
There is
Forest-
an area
By
of town
Hills.
property, as you're driving toward the heights by Central Tree, there is an area of town property on the left behind Forest Hill. I don't know how big it is, that's something that you'd have to look into.
If anything, that'd be good. I hate to say
Are there-
it, parking.
are there any,
It would be a
Well, you
small-
also have to figure the access to it, and the traffic, and all of that. I mean, I looked at that as well, at some of the parcels. It's possible, but then you're talking in and out, it would be a nightmare.
I wasn't sure if it could be connected to the Central Tree, to the driveway at Central Tree, was my question. I don't
But
know
then
that
again, you're
parcel.
talking more
That parcel
traffic, and it would be a nightmare.
On the other
It's
side
bad
of the
enough
road.
as it is during different times.
are there any other town properties, I'm more Well, I am concerned about the loss of hay, the 8 acres of hay. Are there any other town properties that it's not being hayed, that could be hayed?
And
that-
swap.
Is
Is there any way that you,
Dick? Anything?
Not right offhand.
I mean, my interpretation at the last meeting, that wasn't part of the haying process.
Yeah. I just want to
That
also,
wasn't part of the haying agreement.
What would soccer like to do? This is our first choice.
Yep.
We think it's a benefit to the town for lots of reasons. We respect all of the other needs, that the agriculture has, and we'd be happy to help with the suggestion process on how to make that work.
It would definitely be a benefit to the town
Thank you.
as well.
All right, we appreciate how late everybody has stayed. We call
Are you
this a,
concerned with the ticks coming up to that area?
What's that?
Are you concerned with the ticks coming up there?
I am.
Rent to go.
No, because we'll take care of it.
They don't cross the road.
Go through the school, make sure you go through the school.
so at this point, are we ready? I'm gonna recess this for board, poor Margaret is gonna move to the other room again. All right, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us in this very long meeting. And we are almost done. If you are looking at our agenda, Gary has been released for the evening. And we're gonna move on. So is there anybody here frightened to ask for public comment? Really?
Really?
Peter Crane from Nate's Way. If Gary were here, I would have made the joke, don't worry, I don't have a PowerPoint today. It is my fear that the actions of this board over the last 2 meetings have done more harm to volunteerism in this town than good. And I say that because, actually, I could take it back this meeting, the previous meeting, the meeting before. You made the point about how reappointments were up for the, after everyone's term had already expired. It was on the meetings before agenda and specifically passed over. So I don't know what caused that. All I can say is it was set to be done on time. And when I look, and I try to look at this objectively, as if I were not on a board or committee, and I see that a great deal of ado about nothing has happened, it causes me concern of what other people who might consider volunteering for a board would think that it's worth. And with no offense intended, Mr. Stillings, this is not the location for you to learn about the inner workings of a board, of any board. Forget 3. That was a very long time for not a lot of purpose. I do have a question, though. It's come up more than once in a couple meetings. Sheila, you said that you want a change in direction for Concom, but I haven't heard anything more than that. And you've never contacted Concom with desires for change of any sort. Are you saying you don't want us to uphold the Wetlands Protection Act? I mean, what sort of change are you looking for?
I can provide you with something. I think that this board is most likely going to provide you with something formally.
Okay, that would be good. Thank you. I'm going to say again that committee reappointment time, when I can only speak for Concom and Earthworks Board with unanimous consent to reappoint, doesn't sound like the right time to bring up some of these things. If you're looking for a change, ask for a change, for goodness sake. I will leave it at that for now, simply because we are so late. And so I thank you for your indulgence.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment? No? Okay. Margaret.
Yeah.
Go. For sticking with us even through tonight.
So I ask that the board tackle the last item under old business first, because Brian is here from Solect, and he's been participated in all the discussions
Yeah.
tonight.
Come on up, Brian. You know, it's only 9:30, so we figured.
Oh, it's still early, jeez.
Hi.
Hi. So, I guess I'll just, if I could just brief the board very quickly. You have a copy of the license agreement portion of the entire agreement. The way I'm reading this is that the PPA is between the host, which is Wachusett Regional School District, and the provider, which is Solect. The license agreement is between the town and Solect, correct?
Correct.
So the way I've viewed this, and I recommend that the board view it, is that the board's purview is with the license agreement only. I asked a question today about legal review, and the reason I asked that is because it's this board's practice, it's been the board's practice to have contract documents reviewed by legal prior to execution. And because the town is a stakeholder in the PPA by virtue of property ownership, that I wanted assurance from the district that they've had their legal review the PPA, but I haven't gotten an answer. I know you responded to me, but I didn't get an answer from the district today.
Sure.
Now, our building commissioner did actually review the engineering drawings, but those were only for design checks. They're not actually plans at this point, and those won't come forward until you're ready for construction. Is that right?
That's correct. We need to get the utility IA back and have all the solar sorted out first.
Okay. And the other item is that this agreement would involve pilot negotiations or some sort of tax negotiations with the town. And typically that is taken on by the solar committee, who makes recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. So I'd want to refer that to the solar committee to take up the negotiations. And that would have to go to fall town meeting for an authorization for the board to enter into the pilot agreement. So those are the outstanding items, I'm afraid. But you wanted to speak to the project itself and where you're at, I'm sure.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come tonight. I mentioned the last time I was here, I'm a 4-term selectman at Hopkinton. I found tonight very interesting and not unique at all. So if that makes you think anyone one way or another, it's very typical, at least for what I've seen. So we've made our application to the utility. We're awaiting a review from the utility to come back to us for the 2 arrays, particular Naquag and Glenwood. Central Tree, we've kind of put on hold with the district for now because we know there's roof concerns there. There is a possibility, a very distinct possibility, that if you need to get a new roof on that building, that the solar can pay for that new roof and not have any money have to be outlaid by taxpayers or the town in any way. But we can tackle that. It will be a separate process to what we're talking about here this evening. What we have here this evening are these 2 schools where we've got applications into the utility. We're awaiting their engineering information or their response to our submission. And once we get that with the district executing the power purchase agreement, we could proceed to install the solar on the roof with a license from you folks and then sell the power from that array to the school district at a discounted rate. The savings to the school district over a 20-year period, depending on what the final numbers are going to be coming back from the utilities, in the range of $1.1 million to $1.2 million in energy savings alone for those 2 buildings. So it's a good, significant savings for the community, for the communities with the district concept, and potential for more with Central Tree in the future.
So we have Exhibit A attached for Glenwood.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get Naquag.
I'm sorry, I didn't copy Naquag
Oh, that's
too,
all right.
but
I was just.
There is a Naquag
There is a
too.
Naquag. Okay. And then you spoke last time you were here about the whole. We can find you ways to get you a new roof as part of the project.
Yes.
There's no hope of obviously that getting done as part of this. But what are we talking about? We really have no commitment for that, right? It's just still an idea.
So we are doing that elsewhere. I mean, this is not a unique concept, what we're working on here in Rutland. We're doing it in school districts all over the state. The solar, if you have a license to access the roof, if we have a license to access the roof, but we need to access a roof that is safe and sound, and a structural engineer has to say so and stamp a drawing, specific to that before we show up to the building inspector's office for the permit, et cetera, et cetera. If that roof is sound, we move forward. If that roof is not sound and the town would like to have the solar go on the roof and have the solar pay for a new roof, there is a means to do that. It's a different process slightly in that the rate would be different to the district. The savings wouldn't be the same because the savings is going to be less because we have to put up 500 grand or whatever it is to put the new roof on first. But once we sort through that, we could then set up a similar PPA and license agreement and come back and do that school at that time.
But as of right now, there's no action with the district on that.
We wish there was, because that's the one building where the utility, after we submitted the application, came back right away with the IA and said, go ahead and build it. So yeah, we're very eager to do that one, but we know that the town would like to make sure that that roof is sound first, and we'd have to go through that process with you a little bit.
Okay.
So there's a strong incentive for Select, who spent a bunch of money to get that IA from the utility for Central Tree, to proceed. So I can assure you, once we sort this out, we will be pushing Central Tree as well, because we'll probably get that one done first, believe it or not, than the other two, because the other two are still in the study with the utility.
Right.
I have a quick question. I thought there was some discussion quite some time ago about one of the schools had a structural issue with putting an array on the roof.
Yeah, so I heard that when there was a brief discussion about that when I was here last. We did have a structural engineer go out. There should have been reports that went to the building inspector here in town specific to the structures. And I think what may have been confused as a bad roof turned into a structural issue. The bad roof we agreed on that, but I think I know structurally they're all very sound, and we have stamped affidavits to that effect.
Oh, okay. So it was misconstrued as the structural
That's my
issue.
sense.
Well-
I can't say for sure, but that's my sense.
Well, Naquag has a rubber roof, so you'd think the membrane would be an issue, but it has had load issues in the past because of snow load.
Okay.
Where they actually saw the result of that inside the building with some big doors that separate one of the rooms.
So I know Naquag was one of the ones that we did have a structural engineer go
You did.
and inspect.
Okay.
And you should have, and the building inspector does have that certification with the affidavit.
All right, you can pass that down. That's the Naquag roof. So portions of the Naquag roof are older and others are newer, and they're only installing the solar on the newer sections of the roof, from what I understand.
Okay. And the schools are going to be buying electric directly from their own generation? It's going to be internal?
We will invest in and own the array on the roof, Select
Yeah.
Energy. We will then take that power and sell it to the school behind their meter. It's a
Right.
term, behind the meter. And so their bill from N-Grid's going to drop dramatically, but
Yep.
on a cloudy day or a snowy day, there's
Yep.
still power coming in, and they'll pay for that. But the days that they buy power from us, their bill will be, instead of 14 cents a kilowatt hour approximately, it's going to be 9 cents or 9.5 cents a kilowatt hour approximately. So it's a significant savings, and that's where that 600 grand in each school over a 20-year period comes in.
So there was another question way back when. I'm not sure I ever got the answer from the district. The district had actually entered into a net metering power purchase agreement with another provider. Would there be any conflict between your provision of electricity and the other?
If they have so many net meter credits that they can't take the offset of the solar, it would be a conflict, yes. But Joe Scanlon, in walking through that with him, had sorted all that out, and he didn't think that was going to be an issue. Joe has since left the district, so we'll have to kind of sort out a couple of things when
I
someone's
think that should be looked at as part of their legal review of the PPA. The other PPA that they've entered into. It can compare it to this one to make sure there aren't going to be conflicts, because that could cost the school and then taxpayers a lot of money if there is a conflict.
I mean, it's a little bit concerning because we're one of the only communities in the district that's able to do anything like this. The others are on municipal
We're
light.
the only one.
We are, oh, right.
The
I was
only
thinking
one.
Paxton, but no, we're the only one.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So
Yep.
it's not like they could have entered into an agreement for another community. It had to be us.
That's correct.
But you don't have anything in writing. You know, Joe leaving has left a void. I know
Yeah.
they just hired someone new, but there's a big learning gap here, and you feel confident everything's in place.
So Jim Cavello, who was working with Joe, and I think works as their facilities manager and their energy manager of sorts, he's in touch with the superintendent. His first name's Daryl. I'm sorry, his last name escapes me at the moment.
McCall.
Daryl McCall.
Yeah.
And they were reviewing that PPA. Joe was ready to sign it before he left. Like, he was leaving on that Friday. He said, I'm going to sign it. And then he didn't sign it. And then it kind of went
Okay.
into a little vacation mode with everybody else, I think. So, I can't speak to what his intentions were or why.
I just don't think the town should pick up the cost of the legal review on the PPA section.
No.
If we had to do a
No.
legal review on the license agreement, that would be fine, but I think
So
we should be looking at that.
we would like to keep this moving forward for you. There's a few holes. I guess Margaret's recommendation just now was to approve this contingent.
Yes, and the contingencies would be on the Wachusett Regional School District's legal review of the PPA. And I would add that they have their legal also review their existing PPA to make sure there are no inherent conflicts between the two. And also on the referral for the referral of the project to the Solar Committee for the purpose of ultimately negotiating a pilot. And I'm going to put a placeholder on our fall special town meeting warrant for the board's authorization to enter into the pilot agreement. So there's going to be about 5. I think there'll be 5 different pilot agreements on the fall special town meeting warrant.
Is there anything appropriate in getting something for Central Tree as well as part of these contingencies? I'm not sure how that would really be framed, though. I understand that it's a separate project. It's just
Can I, as a fellow selectman, make a couple suggestions? So I would encourage a contingency of signing a motion to have the chair sign the license contingent upon X, Y, and Z. One of those contingencies would be that the district execute and sign the PPA.
Yes.
Not only review it, but execute and sign. And then another contingency could be that Select Energy and the district continue the due diligence necessary for Central Tree to come to fruition as well. That works for us. I think that would work well for the board, and I think the district would, I can't speak for them, but I can't see why that would impact them in any way different than what we've already been working on.
Thank you for those suggestions.
yeah, I like that.
I think it's fine. I think it covers all bases, so,
So I think if I could have a motion to sign, for the chair to sign, I guess, is it just the chair? The license with Select Energy Development LLC.
Yeah.
Subject to the following, legal review of the PPA and execution of it, clearance review and clearance of the previous PPA, the referral of the project to the Solar Committee for pilot negotiations, and for confirmation of continued due diligence with Select Energy and WRSD on the Central Tree Middle School roof replacement project.
I would just make sure
No.
that this is
So moved.
WRSD legal review.
yes.
Yeah,
And who's-
yeah, that first one is WRSD.
At whose
Funded.
expense?
Funded.
That would be the district, since they are the beneficiaries of this, yes.
You like that, Skip?
Yeah.
All right, I had a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any more questions? What's wrong with that correction, right? Make sure
Through
it's
the chair, if I
WRSD
could,
funded.
please.
You have a correction?
Sorry, not a correction, no. The referral to the Solar Committee for the pilot.
Yep.
That's just to get that process going, but
Yes.
that wouldn't prevent you from signing, correct? Because timing is in the industry of solar, it's all about when you can get
No,
going.
referral to, not,
Got
referral to, not finalization of the pilot.
And through the chair, Diane Peterson is already aware of this, so she's weighed in. She was on the email thread today. So she is aware of it, and she works with the assessor's office, so that's
so-
kind of the central point, yeah.
You realize, Brian, our relationship with the district tends to be a little bit adversarial, so this is a leap of faith.
So as I said, 4th-term selectman, 1 school committee, 5 members. I can't imagine what all goes on in a regional district with that many people involved.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's very
1 and
challenging
2.
for everybody.
Putting our trust in you here.
Yeah. So this is all good, and if this isn't gonna work for you guys and us, we're not gonna do it. But we gotta take the steps to find out if we can make it happen. And we'll be back regularly to fill you in what's going on.
Thank you. I
Okay.
suppose it's a good sign that you're still here and it's 9:45.
I enjoyed it tonight. It's very interesting.
Wants to keep things moving forward. Can't blame you.
Okay,
So
we have a-
Sheila, your signature will need a notarization, so I'm going to ask you to go into Anita's office tomorrow to
Okay,
to
we
do
haven't
that.
actually voted. We have a motion and a second,
Second.
and all in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
It only took
Have a
4
good night.
hours.
Be
Okay,
well.
good
Thank
night.
you, Brian.
Drive safely.
Onward.
How about a motion to sign this alcohol beverage control license for Rutland Sportsman's Club?
Yep, was everybody clear on what had happened there? There was an ABCC question. We are just, we allowed the correction to happen. That was all ABCC, not us. But this is just to have clear paperwork for us.
Okay. And they were getting double billed. They were getting,
By ABCC?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, they had ABCC issues.
So does this remedy that?
This really has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is us making sure our paperwork matches what they had to do for the other agency.
Okay.
Yeah, right?
We're not aware of double billing, so it
Yeah,
would have been through ABCC if something like that was happening.
Who did,
This is still just.
Denise Boyer, did she speak with you, Abby, on,
and pulled all their paper files and updated their electronic databases to the last approved manager and board of director they had on file, which was incorrect information, so that they asked the Sportsman's Club to update their license to reflect
Right.
the current manager, who just has happened to be there for probably 20 years, and the current board of directors and the Secretary of State website, which they did. It came back from the ABCC with a question on nonprofit versus shares. Would you have the paperwork in front of you? She has now corrected it again. So we just need to resubmit her corrected paperwork, and this is just a new local approval.
without charge?
We don't charge them. They had
Or-
to submit an original charge to change their manager and change their board of director on file with ABCC. They're just charged
That was on
annually
them.
for the local renewal.
Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds like ABCC is doing audits.
ABCC transferred their records from paper records to electronic records, which is where they caught some of this stuff.
Yeah, pick some stuff up.
So,
Okay,
How about
done. Next. Do we have
new
to vote on
business?
that?
I have a.
Yeah,
map.
Margaret, you wanna vote on this, or is this just a re-sign? We already did
You don't
sign
need to
it.
vote on it. It's just a.
Okay. Yeah. Corrected document, okay.
I have a memorandum of agreement for my contract to staple to my contract on the extension through August on a part-time temporary basis. That vote should be voted and signed by the board.
Is there only one Rutland Sportsman Club signature needed, or
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, there's one original.
Okay.
Does anybody need to look at the agreement? This is an addendum to her contract, just taking her through, okay. Did anybody have any questions on it?
The only thing that's, I've laid out the schedule, the transition schedule
you.
through August. I've laid out the hourly rate. There's a $500 general, I'm sorry, I'm pointing, general expense payment to be made at the end of August for whatever mileage and other expenses. And that's it.
Yep, that was number 4.
And David has approved it as to legal form.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to sign the MOA with Margaret?
So moved.
Second.
Any more questions?
Aye.
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 Great, unanimous.
It's called moving along.
Onward.
And
Alright.
finally, the last, there are a number of items on here for the board's review. So I would ask if the board is so inclined to move that to your next meeting.
Absolutely.
Skip poor Gary tonight?
We skipped Gary.
He sent him over.
Gary
He went
skipped
home.
himself. Yeah, Gary.
This is a good night to skip.
Yep, well, he waited a long time before he left.
So the last thing would be the acceptance of the Heifer Farm Playground equipment. So the board should accept donations, and you have the letter from Heifer specifically donating it to the town.
So
So,
we're all understanding that this is not US, you're not
ADA.
handicapped,
That's
ADA,
right.
and all that.
and we all understand that as of right now, there is no money to prepare the site.
There is only $650 in the gift
Right.
account at the moment.
But at this point, at least we will have accepted the actual item, and they can go from there.
Where do they put it?
They still want to put it at the same location where the smallest kids play soccer at the community center.
But in the, is it
Hang on to trees.
pending money to
It
be
is.
able to install this?
it
We're
is
just gonna leave it
pending-
laying around?
It is
or-
pending a public-private partnership of money they've raised. Private entities who have said they would do some site work, which will require our DPW to supervise it.
And accepting this is just that we will take ownership, but we don't actually have to
Have a look
physically
at
get
that
it yet,
sentence.
or the town has to physically get it.
We
And
do not. The resident who has kind of spearheaded this has indicated that she has the manpower, womanpower to
Okay.
to move the
And there's some
structure.
place it can go in between, or
Again, the site is not prepared,
Right.
so that's our next
Yeah.
step. We're just accepting it as a gift
what
and
conditions?
going on. 'Cause at this point, it wasn't even ours yet.
And I guess my question just was,
you can
accepting
keep
it
that.
as a gift does not mean that it needs to be off of that property.
Immediately, no. I mean, they want it moved, but it's not.
Right,
Yeah.
that was my.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're gonna have all
Yeah.
bunch of stuff behind the DPW again, you know? We already got some room with the lights going.
Oh, okay.
All right,
So
could
one
I get
more
a motion to accept the playground from Heifer Farm as per the letter from Heifer International? Sir,
Second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Skip?
No.
4-1.
One
4 to
more
1.
item. One more item, the CMRPC alternate appointment. The planning board is responsible for appointing the primary member, the Board of Selectmen's responsible for appointing the alternate. And it's been recommended by the planning board, I think we have it in here somewhere, that Sean Moore serve as the alternate to Dick on CMRPC. Here it is.
Was this posted anywhere? Ever? Did anybody? Just the website for alternate?
At least a year.
Yeah, because there has been no one.
The post.
And no
He
one,
was the alternate?
You used to be.
Oh, that's right.
And it's very important that the town be represented at these meetings, as you know.
Sean, you're on planning board.
Yes.
You're on Concom. You're on the bylaw subcommittee for marijuana?
No,
No?
Oh, no, you can't, that's right.
I can't.
You're not on that?
No.
Okay. Just those two?
Yeah,
For now.
for now.
you able to take this on too?
I enjoy volunteering for my town.
And Dick, you go to 99.9% of the meetings anyway,
I was
don't
gonna
you?
say, it'll be in the springtime, I won't be around or something like that.
There you
I'll
go,
be
Sean.
gone.
Get me out of the house.
Motion to appoint.
Second.
Is your wife gonna be able to go to Girl Scout meetings? Just gonna put that out there.
We have plenty of babysitters.
Any more comments? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's all.
That's
Motion
all.
adjourned.
Second.